LoveLore Library. Chapter 73. Han Kongan was a prisoner on death row and couldn't be visited. However, Han Yunshi's identity was special and she was the Crown Prince's savior. Although this matter wasn't made public, the Supreme Court's Chancellor still knew about it. He had already instructed that they must let Han Yunshi in. The jailers who lynched her last time were all scared and hid, afraid of being recognized. The jailer who led the way reported in a low voice, "Esteemed Wang Fei, Han Kongan has been shouting since last night. He said he wants to see you. You can leave first. I'll call you if there's anything." Han Yunshi said indifferently. It wasn't strange that Han Kongan wanted to see her. It was nothing more than asking her to save his life. Han Yunshi couldn't understand this kind of person. He clearly knew that they were enemies, so why ask for it? Couldn't he have some backbone if he didn't get what he asked for? When Han Kongan saw Han Yunshi coming over, he pounced over in surprise. Fortunately, there were iron bars blocking him. In just one night and half a day, Han Kongan was already unrecognizable. His hair was disheveled and his prison clothes were disheveled. It was obvious that he had been tortured. How could someone who entered the imperial prison not be tortured? Han Yunshi had experienced it herself. "Daughter, you're finally here. Father knew that you would come. Daddy knows that you won't abandon Daddy." Han Kongan's voice was choked in his throat. His eyes were sunken and red, making him look like a pitiful old man. Those who didn't know would think that Han Yunshi, this unfilial daughter, had abandoned him. Cold, Han Yunshi looked at him. She leaned against the wall and sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Han Kongan's eyes turned red again. He hugged the iron bars and slowly slid down to sit down. "Daughter, you're the only one who can save your father now. Daddy is counting on you. Say something, won't you?" Han Kongan's eyes were filled with deep hope. His voice was old and sorrowful, but Han Yunshi was indifferent. She coldly examined him. When Han Kongan saw her cold eyes, he slightly stiffened and suddenly fell silent. He looked at her deeply with sorrowful eyes, looking extremely miserable. "Han Kongan, you've finally remembered that I'm your daughter," Han Yunshi finally spoke up, her face full of ridicule. In his memory, when had this father ever called him daughter? Han Yunshi pursed his lips and touched his old face. He shook his head repeatedly and muttered to himself as if he was very regretful. However, Han Yunshi didn't hear what he said clearly. Soon, Han Kongan raised his head again. He hugged the iron bars and said emotionally, "Daughter, Daddy knows his mistake. Daddy is already so old. Can you forgive Daddy? Take it as Father begging you." "Why?" Han Yunshi said coldly. It was ridiculous for the child to ask for forgiveness after he had grown up. "Yunshi, for better or worse, I'm still your father. Are you willing to watch as your father is paraded through the streets? Father can't afford to lose face like this. Only you can save Daddy now. Just take it as Daddy begging you, begging you, begging you, for the sake of your dead mother, save Daddy this one time." It would have been better if Han Kongan hadn't said these words, because once he did, Han Yunshi's temper flared up. She impatiently cut him off. "Divine Dr. Han, you think too highly of me. You've already been sentenced to death. I don't have that much face on my own. No. You've saved His Highness the Crown Prince's life, so the Emperor will definitely listen to you. Daughter, you've even saved the Han clan's 3 generations. Save Daddy, too. His Majesty will definitely listen to you. You're a meritorious official now. Why don't you go beg the Duke of Qin? His Majesty will listen to his words." Han Kongan seemed to be grasping at his last life-saving straw as he spoke and begged with all his might. "Yunshi, as long as you save Daddy, Daddy will agree to anything. But the more he acted like this, the more Han Yunxi loathed him. "You'll agree to anything, right?" she asked with a cold smile. Han Kongin hastily nodded, looking extremely pitiful. "Very good. Then tell me, how did my mother die?" Han Yunxi coldly asked. This was the sole purpose of her trip here. Who knew that Han Kongin's pleas would come to an abrupt end at these words? Han Yunxi didn't miss the complicated look in his eyes as she asked, "My mother died from dystocia. Are there any witnesses? Were there any attempts to save her?" Han Yunxi's blunt and incisive question made Han Kongin's cloudy and sorrowful eyes clear up in an instant. He thought that Han Yunxi and his mother would definitely be soft-hearted and easy to talk things over. As long as he begged properly, this girl would still be soft-hearted and save him. But he never expected that she'd come for this matter. Seeing the change in Han Kongin's expression, Han Yunxi's lips rose into a cold smile. She knew that her suspicions were correct. "What, are you surprised that I would ask this?" Han Yunxi's voice contained suppressed anger. She thought that if the truth was as she guessed, that Han Kongin was jealous of her mother's medical talent and didn't save her, causing her mother's death, then before this man died, she would definitely make him suffer a fate worse than death. However, the situation was completely out of Han Yunxi's expectations. Han Kongin looked at Han Yunxi and suddenly laughed. I didn't expect that I, Han Kongin, would have such a day, ahahaha." Han Yunxi frowned as she looked at him. She couldn't understand why the man who was begging her just a moment ago would laugh so bleakly at this moment. Facing her questioning, shouldn't he have a guilty conscience and be afraid? Could it be that the truth wasn't what she thought? "Are you going to speak or not?" Han Yunxi didn't have that much patience. "Han Yunxi, are you sure you won't save father?" Han Kongin suddenly became serious, his tone revealing a hint of threat. This time, Han Yunxi realized that this old thing had been acting all along, acting pitiful to gain sympathy. Han Yunxi immediately stood up and warned him coldly, "Don't even think about it. You can choose not to speak, but let me tell you, I have ways to make you speak. If I tell you and you save my life, I'll tell you the truth. Are you willing?" Han Kongin also stood up. He changed his old and flustered look and became calm and full of confidence. "You already have no right to talk terms with me," Han Yunxi said angrily. "Yes, you will definitely be very interested in the truth that I know. That's the agreement between Madame Tianxin and I." Han Kongin deliberately lowered his voice and was full of mystery. Once he said this, Han Yunxi was shocked. Han Kongin actually called her mother Madame Tianxin. No matter how she listened to his tone, it didn't seem like he was talking about his wife. Looking at Han Yunxi's expression, a hint of jealousy flashed across Han Kongin's eyes. Why was Han Yunxi so smart and the bunch of useless people in the Han family so stupid? Why didn't he have a daughter like her? What exactly is going on? Han Yunxi became more and more uneasy. However, Han Kongin was calm and composed. "As long as you promise to save my life, I'll definitely tell you. If you don't tell me, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death." Han Yunxi's eyes narrowed into a straight line, her whole body was filled with a dangerous aura. However, the bargaining chips in Han Kongin's hands were too heavy. He wasn't afraid. Besides, he was the head of the family. How many big scenes had he not seen and how many things had he not experienced? How could he compromise so easily? "Come at me. After all, old man is also a person who is about to die. It'll only be 3 days before he suffers a fate worse than death." Han Kongin laughed coldly. "You." Han Yunxi stepped forward and closed in. Han Kongin didn't retreat. His expression was calm. "If you don't believe me, you can try. This old thing." Han Yunxi drew back, her hands clenched into fists in her sleeves. "Fine, I promise you. Just you wait." So speaking, she didn't even spare Han Kongan a glance before turning to leave. For the sake of finding out the truth, she could only agree to Han Kongan's request. She didn't dare to take the risk. If Han Kongan didn't tell her, then she'd never know the truth. However, she only promised to save his life, not to get him out of the prison cell. As soon as she left the prison, Han Yunxi went straight to the palace. She didn't see Emperor Tianhui, but the crown prince. Last time, Emperor Tianhui had already been extremely unwilling to yield. If she begged him again, she might not get anything. Instead, it'd only make him feel disgusted. As for Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi didn't even dare to think about it. She could only go find the crown prince. She used the excuse of examining his wounds to see him. There was no need to report her arrival, but a eunuch respectfully led her all the way to the eastern palace. Gu Beiyue had just left, so the two of them didn't bump into each other. Long Tianma was surprised to see Han Yunxi here. That day, Han Yunxi had given Gu Beiyue the job of changing the bandages with detailed instructions. Long Tianma thought she wouldn't come. Long Tianma had disdained Han Yunxi's ugly features in the past. Even though Imperial Grandmother had decreed the marriage, he still felt that marrying Han Yunxi was too much of an injustice for Imperial Uncle Qin. But now he felt gratitude and admiration for her from the bottom of his heart. Unlike the Empress Dowager and Empress, he didn't have any grudges with Grand Concubine Yi and Han Yunxi. Although he knew his imperial father was on guard against the Duke of Qin, he also knew that his father hoped he'd gain the man's support. Thus, he was more than happy to get on good terms with Qin Wangfei. "Imperial aunt, I've troubled you to come personally. It's been hard on you." Long Tianma was very polite. Although they were about the same age, there was still respect between them. Han Yunxi didn't examine his wounds, but only his pulse. "You've recovered well. It looks like you'll be able to get off the bed in 2 or 3 days. This is all thanks to Imperial Aunt's formidable skills." Long Tianma was very polite. Although Han Yunxi didn't know whether Long Tianma's heart was black or white, his manners on the surface were much better than Princess Changping's. Such self-cultivation was worthy of being the heir apparent. After a round of pleasantries, Han Yunxi probed, "Crown Prince, you've finally recovered from your illness. Does His Majesty plan to grant amnesty to the world?" Long Tianma was a smart man. As soon as he heard Han Yunxi's words, a complicated look flitted past his eyes. After some hesitation, he replied, "I've never heard Imperial Father mention it." "Then does Crown Prince have such a plan?" Han Yunxi probed again. At this point, Long Tianma was basically certain that Han Yunxi had come to ask for a favor. He smiled and said straightforwardly, "Could it be that Imperial Aunt has someone you want to pardon?" Not expecting Long Tianma to be so direct, Han Yunxi felt embarrassed. She also smiled, "Crown Prince is truly a smart man. Imperial Aunt praises me too much. If there's anything, there's no harm in Imperial Aunt saying it directly," Long Tianma said seriously. "My father, Han Kongan, has been sentenced to death. 3 days later, he will be paraded through the streets and beheaded at noon." Han Yunxi said, then sighed softly, "Although he deserved to die, no matter what, he's still my father. As his daughter, I can't just watch him die. A lifetime of imprisonment is better than death." Han Yunxi purposely emphasized the last part. At this point, Long Tianma immediately understood what she meant. Actually, even if Han Yunxi didn't say it, he could guess that Han Yunxi wanted to grant amnesty to the world because she wanted to save her father. However, as long as she asked Imperial Uncle Qin, and Imperial Uncle Qin suggested it to Imperial Father would definitely agree. He didn't expect that she didn't go to Imperial Uncle Qin, but came to him instead. This was interesting. Chapter 74. Looking at Han Yunxi, Long Tianma didn't quite understand, but he wouldn't refuse to help. Although Imperial Father had bestowed rewards upon him, he owed Han Yunxi a debt of gratitude for saving his life. He was planning to find a chance to repay her as well. Moreover, a general amnesty was an excellent reason to win over the hearts of the people. After so many years of seclusion, he'd have to make his first move. Long Tianma nodded and said, "This crown prince's illness has been cured. Granting amnesty is a good idea. Imperial Aunt, you can go back first. When Imperial Father comes later, I will report this matter." Although she knew that Long Tianma would agree, she didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Han Yunxi was overjoyed and looked at this crown prince in a new light. Before leaving, Long Tianma called out to her, "Imperial Aunt, when you see Imperial Uncle, please send my regards. Tell him that after I recover, I will go and see him." Han Yunxi nodded. From what she knew, Long Fei Yi and the other princes, including the crown prince, weren't very close. Long Tianma's actions were obviously to curry favor with Long Fei Yi. However, although his illness had been cured, Long Fei Yi didn't come to see him. It was really disappointing. Of course, Han Yunxi couldn't care so much. Her heart was filled with Han Konggen's matter. Han Yunxi didn't go out after returning to the Duke of Qin's residence. She kept waiting for news and occasionally let Chen Xiang go out to ask around. Unexpectedly, it was already the afternoon of the second day, and the notices on the streets were still there. The streets were still full of discussions. It was said that several branches of the Han family had gone to visit Han Konggen in prison, but they couldn't see him. When they came back, they fought over the family property. Although Long Tianma's appearance had a high chance of success, Han Yunxi was still nervous when she didn't get a definite answer. After all, time was tight. At night, Han Yunxi stood by the window and looked at the capital's night sky with a frown. Tomorrow was the last day. What was the situation with Long Tianma? What was the truth behind Madame Tianqin's difficult labor? What secrets were there between Lady Tianqin and Han Konggen? That night, he tossed and turned, unable to fall asleep. However, good news came the next morning. Chen Xiang knocked on the door while shouting, "Mistress, Mistress, His Majesty has issued a general amnesty early in the morning. Except for the crime of rebellion, all capital crimes have been changed to permanent imprisonment." He said that the crown prince personally requested for this. Han Yunxi almost jumped out of bed. After washing up and getting dressed, she didn't even have time to eat and immediately ran to the prison. The universal amnesty order had just been issued, and the news spread the fastest in the imperial prison. Han Konggen heard a lot of discussions from afar, and even saw a few prisoners on death row being escorted out of their cells. "I heard that it was the crown prince who proposed a general amnesty. Hee, this time, we can be considered to have the crown prince's blessing. That's right, we'll be able to get out soon, right? Look, those death row prisoners have been taken away. They're probably going to let them go. Hee, it will be our turn soon." The sounds of discussion filled the entire prison cell. Han Konggen leaned against the metal door to listen, his cloudy eyes brightening. He sighed in admiration in his heart. Why didn't he realize that Han Yunxi was so smart? She didn't beg Emperor Tianhui, but the crown prince instead. She actually came up with the idea of a general amnesty. Was this really the same Han Yunxi from before? He always felt that this daughter couldn't compare to her mother, but now his opinion was shaken. Very soon, Han Yunxi arrived. Han Konggen's gaze on her changed slightly. "Daughter, you're really smart. Looks like you know about His Majesty's general amnesty." Han Yunxi was in a bad mood. "You should take your father out of the death row prison by now, right?" Han Konggen's mental state was clearly much better. Although he was in a sorry state, he stood ramrod straight and had quite the bearing. Han Yunxi's eyes flashed with ridicule before she asked coldly, "Then when are you planning to tell me the truth? At the very least, let your father leave this place first." Han Kongin was very firm. Most doctors were misophobic, so he hated the rotting stench of death in this death row prison cell. Han Yunxi's mocking smile widened. If Han Kongin thought he could reach for a yard after getting an inch, then he was gravely mistaken. She narrowed her eyes and warned coldly, "Han Kongin, you can't die now. Do you believe that I can make you live a life worse than death every single day?" Now that Han Kongin had been spared from death, he was no longer a barefooted man. How could he not fear Han Yunxi's threat? Seeing Han Yunxi's dangerous expression, Han Kongin was a little unhappy, but he stopped while he was ahead. He pointed at the foot of the wall, indicating that Han Yunxi should sit down and talk. Han Yunxi did the same as last time and leaned against the wall, her eyes cold as she stared straight at Han Kongin. Seeing that she was on guard, Han Kongin sat down and sighed. "Don't worry, I won't lie to you at a time like this. Cut the crap. Answer my question. How did my mother die?" Han Yunxi said coldly. Han Kongin did not answer her question, but the words he said almost made Han Yunxi's heart stop beating. It was too unexpected. He said, "Han Yunxi, I can tell you very clearly that I, Han Kongin, am not your biological father." What? Han Yunxi could not believe her ears. She was extremely shocked and her eyes unconsciously widened. Seeing Han Yunxi's shock, Han Kongin's eyes unconsciously revealed a hint of sadness. Everyone knew that he had never fulfilled his duty as a father to this daughter, but no one knew how much he wished that this daughter was his own flesh and blood deep in his heart. It was not only because Han Yunxi had made a fortune that he wished so. Back when Han Yunxi was still in her mother's womb, he had been hoping so. Unfortunately, he wasn't worthy of that woman. Han Yunxi recovered from her shock and suddenly grew angry. "Han Kongin, you're lying." Lady Tianqin was a legend. She was brimming with talent and a benevolent doctor. How could she be a fickle woman? How could she have an illegitimate daughter? Moreover, Han Yunxi would never believe that a man like Han Kongin could tolerate an extramarital affair and raise someone else's child. "I'm not lying to you. I have proof." Han Kongin was very calm. Leaving aside Han Yunxi, even anyone in Tianning's capital who had heard of Lady Tianqin's deeds wouldn't believe this. Still, this was absolutely true. Otherwise, Han Yunxi was still the Han family's daughter of the first wife and the Duke of Qin's fiancée. Why wouldn't he treat a small poison scar on her face? What proof? Han Yunxi asked anxiously. "Promise me one thing and I'll tell you everything." Han Kongin was very serious. It wasn't a threat, but a kind of determination. But the agitated Han Yunxi ignored the determination in his eyes and shot to her feet. "Don't even think about it. I've already saved your life. What other chips do you have to talk terms with me?" No matter what, Han Yunxi refused to believe that Lady Tianqin would cheat. If she really was an illegitimate daughter, then it had to be Han Kongin who'd let Lady Tianqin down. Han Yunxi was already furious at this point. Han Kongin's conditions had no doubt infuriated her. But in the face of such a furious Han Yunxi, Han Kongin was very calm. "Han Yunxi, listen to me first before you answer me. It won't be too late." As he spoke, he took out a bunch of keys from his sleeves and passed them through the metal bars to Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi was slightly shocked. She recognized this key. It was the storehouse key. It was the symbol of the head of the family. In the storehouse, not only did it store the Han family's assets, it also stored two important things. One was the Han family's precious medicinal herbs, and the other was the Han family medical codex. Every medical family would have their own medical codex that recorded secret prescriptions and secret books. It was passed down from generation to generation and only passed down to the heir of the family head. The Han family medical codex was the family treasure of the Han family. Obtaining these things was equivalent to obtaining the entire Han family. Although the Han family's reputation had been ruined because of Han Kongen's imprisonment, the foundation of the Han family was still there. Not to mention other things, just the medical skills recorded in the Han family medical codex was enough to create a new generation of famous doctors. Looking at the key in front of her, Han Yunxi didn't move. Was Han Kongen planning to give the storehouse key to her? That wasn't possible. Not to mention that she wasn't of the Han family's bloodline. Even if she was already a married daughter. She didn't have the right to inherit the position of the head of the Han family. What kind of condition was Han Kongen offering? Han Yunxi took a step back and distanced herself from the key. Coldly, she asked, "What do you mean? Promise me that you'll do your best to support the new head of the family and revive the Han family. Everything will be for the sake of the Han family," Han Kongen said word by word. His bloodshot eyes shone with a determined light. Revive the Han family. Han Yunxi was very surprised. She originally thought that Han Kongen would threaten her to get him out of prison. She didn't expect him to propose such a condition. Not for himself, but for the Han family. Han Yunxi had always been filled with disappointment and disdain for this father. In her impression, this old thing was a selfish person. However, at this moment, she saw that he was righteous. However, Han Yunxi didn't understand. Why did he want her to do her best to realize his righteousness and put the Han family first? Had the Han family done anything for her? Had they given her anything? That was just a place that carried her painful memories. What right did he have to ask her to risk and sacrifice herself for the Han family? Moreover, according to what Han Kongen said, she and the Han family didn't even have any blood relations. Seeing the determination in Han Kongen's eyes, Han Yunxi's lips curled into a mocking smile. "You seem to be very confident that I will agree to your request. Because other than me, no one else in this world knows about your mother, including your biological father." Han Kongen's tone was firm. "I've already said that even your life is mine. You don't have any bargaining chips to negotiate with me," Han Yunxi said coldly. However, Han Kongen laughed. "If the Han family is defeated by the old man, what use does the old man have for his life? The old man can only kill himself to repay his ancestors." Han Yunxi didn't take it to heart. In her opinion, Han Kongen didn't have the courage to kill himself. However, who knew that after Han Kongen said that, he actually turned around and slammed into the wall at the side. Seeing this, Han Yunxi was immediately shocked. No. If Han Kongen really died, all her efforts over the past few days would be in vain. Where would she go to find the truth? However, Han Yunxi's no didn't stop Han Kongen. He was serious. His head was already bleeding from the impact, but he still wanted to continue slamming into the wall. Han Yunxi was shocked. It seemed that she had misjudged this old thing. The mission of the family was deeply ingrained in his heart. "Okay, I promise you," Han Yunxi said loudly. Chapter 75. What a stubborn fellow. At Han Yunxi's shout, Han Kongen stopped. But as soon as he turned to look, he felt dizzy and collapsed to the ground. Han Yunxi was shocked and quickly called for the jailer to open the door. Han Yunxi went in to take a look and heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, Han Kongen's old bones were strong enough. He only had a superficial wound and fell because he was dizzy. He didn't have a concussion. He collapsed on the ground with his eyes closed. He didn't really faint. Han Yunxi signaled for the jailer to leave. She sat down beside Han Kongan. Since she had promised him, she could ask him after he had rested enough. Although Han Kongan wasn't seriously injured, he was still very dizzy. After all, he had been tormented here for a few days and nights. Han Yunxi waited patiently at the side, pondering the relationship between Madame Tianqin and Han Kongan. Who was her biological father? Did Madame Tianqin die with her eyes wide open? Han Yunxi waited patiently, but Han Kongan was anxious. Although he was still dizzy, he asked anxiously, Han Yunxi, you agreed? You really agreed? Han Yunxi looked at him coldly and pursed her lips. She said unhappily, can you tell me the truth now? However, Han Kongan wasn't in a hurry to tell her the truth. Instead, he lowered his head and sighed. Han Yunxi, I'm old. This time, my reputation has been ruined. There's no one to carry on the Han family's medical skills. You know, all my sons, none of them are capable, especially the eldest. Only the seventh is worth nurturing. It's a pity that he's young and can't take on the responsibility. You have to protect him. Han Yunxi didn't have so many thoughts at the moment. She urged him coldly, I understand. You can speak now. This time, Han Kongan took out a handkerchief. Han Yunxi knew that it was a woman's handkerchief with one look. The style was very old. Han Kongan unfolded the handkerchief. There were words written in blood on the handkerchief. Han Yunxi was shocked. She took a closer look and realized that it was an agreement. Heavens, this was an agreement between Madame Tianqin and Han Kongan. They were actually an agreement husband and wife. Han Yunxi, your mother and I, Lady Tianqin, are just husband and wife in name only. When she married me, she was already pregnant with you, Han Kongan said calmly. Why did you marry her? Han Yunxi was shocked and blurted out. She thought it was an affair after marriage, but she didn't expect it to be like this. Because... Han Kongan paused, and a self-deprecating smile appeared on his lips. Because her medical skills are superb, and she can help me become a director of the medical school. It's just a deal between us. If it wasn't for this agreement, Han Yunxi might not have believed it, but the evidence was right in front of her. She felt inexplicably nervous as she grit her teeth and asked, why did she marry you? Where's my real father? However, Han Kongan sighed. I want to know too. What? Han Kongan didn't know either. Han Yunxi couldn't believe her ears. You didn't know anything and you dared to marry her. Daughter, aw. Not only do I not know who your father is, I don't know your mother's origins either. Your mother came to find me when she was a month pregnant and promised to help me become a candidate for a director of the medical school. I'd be able to become a director in less than 10 years. Her conditions were that I would marry her and give her a proper status, acknowledge you as my child, and give you a home. Han Kongan sighed again and again. How could he not be moved when faced with a woman as wondrous as Lady Tianqin? How could he not feel regret? He'd once probed and asked, but Lady Tianqin wouldn't say a thing. He'd even considered having Lady Tianqin abort the child in her womb and start over with him, but she'd heartlessly rejected him. After marrying Lady Tianqin, he discovered more and more that this woman's medical skills were exquisite. That Lady Tianqin had cured many cases that he'd been helpless against, and when she became the Han family spokesperson in Tianning's capital city, he was jealous. Whether it was in terms of fame or medical skills, he couldn't tolerate his own wife surpassing him, even if this wife was only a contractual wife. He'd once madly investigated her origins, but hadn't found a single clue. Han Yunxi didn't understand and asked in bewilderment, isn't my mother from Heezy County's Bailey clan? Han Yunxi had investigated all this, but Han Kongan only smiled and shook his head. I made up this identity for her. I spent some silver to bribe the Bailey clan in Heezy County. I've long investigated, but unfortunately, I didn't find a single clue. She, seems to have appeared out of thin air. Speaking up to here, Hong Kong's eyes revealed traces of helplessness and doting. Despite his jealousy, Hong Kong still harbored a trace of affection towards Lady Tianqin in his heart. Unfortunately, Lady Tianqin's identity was mysterious and her medical skills exquisite. In the end, he couldn't reach her. Han Yunqi was very surprised. She never expected things to turn out like this. Lady Tianqin's origins were so mysterious that even Han Kongin didn't know, so who else would? Lady Tianqin had been married to Han Kongin for less than a year before she died in childbirth. She didn't even have any friends in Tianning's capital city. Her name was Bailey Tianqin, but that was probably a fake name. So you didn't find out who my father was either? Han Yunqi muttered to herself. Han Kongin smiled helplessly. I'm the same as you. I really want to know. Just what kind of man could win Lady Tianqin's heart? That woman not only had exquisite medical skills, but was also intelligent and magnanimous. The late emperor had only met her once, but he'd praised her endlessly. Then why did she die in childbirth? Han Yunqi suddenly asked. Despite her surprise, she hadn't forgotten the question she was most concerned about. But Han Kongin only laughed disdainfully. Han Yunqi, what do you think the reason was? Let me tell you, your mother's intelligence far surpasses yours. She didn't even care about the concubines in my house. Moreover, do you think I wanted her to die? Han Kongin could tell that Han Yunqi was suspicious of him, but he only found her suspicions laughable. Han Yunqi, I have the least reason to kill your mother, Han Kongin said word by word seriously. Although he was jealous and hated the child in Lady Tianqin's womb who wasn't related to him by blood, Han Kongin wasn't so cruel as to kill her. Moreover, Lady Tianqin had promised to help him become a director of the medical academy. Her death would have the greatest impact on him and the Han family. I refuse to believe that she died in childbirth. There must be something wrong here. My mother was a doctor. Didn't she know her own body's condition? Han Yunqi asked angrily. Han Kongin had no reason to kill her mother, but she couldn't accept that she died in childbirth. As far as she knew, Lady Tianqin hadn't noticed anything strange before she gave birth. There must be nothing wrong with Lady Tianqin's body. If she died in childbirth, it must be a problem with the position of the fetus. Han Kongin looked at Han Yunqi for a while before he spoke. Han Yunqi, you're a peanut with a foot on the lotus. You're lucky enough to keep your life. His words confirmed Han Yunqi's suspicions. Although it sounded nice, it was actually very scary. It meant that the fetus was in the breech position. This meant that the fetus was born with its feet below. When it was born, its feet came out first. This situation could easily cause the fetus to lack oxygen and the mother to lose too much blood. In modern times, a caesarean section was necessary. Otherwise, no hospital would dare to deliver a child. In ancient times, medical conditions were very limited. Although there were exceptions, the midwives would always ask whether they wanted to save the mother or the child. Didn't my mother say anything before she gave birth? Han Yunqi questioned. Although it was very dangerous, Lady Tianqin was an exception. With Lady Tianqin's medical skills, she could have at least figured out the position of the fetus before giving birth. Once she knew that the position of the fetus was wrong, she could have used acupuncture to adjust it. Even if she didn't manage to adjust it in the end, she would have at least informed the midwife before she gave birth so that they could be prepared. However, Lady Tianqin didn't say anything before she gave birth. Giving birth was a big deal. How could she allow herself to be in danger? Han Yunqi's suspicions were actually things that Han Kongin couldn't understand. He shook his head. No, I asked her a few times. She said it was fine. Han Kongan remembered that the palace sent a midwife over in advance. However, he didn't hear what the midwife said. When she found out that the fetus was in the womb, the midwife was shocked. Han Yunshi shook her head repeatedly and said with certainty, "There must be a problem. Perhaps the problem lies with your mother. It's a pity." Han Kongan sighed. She had been gone for so many years. The answer to this riddle was probably going to be lost forever. Then what about the poison scar on my face? Han Yunshi asked again. If she didn't remember wrongly, she had this poison scar when she was born. That was poison. How could it be there when she wasn't born? Could it be that Lady Tianqin was drugged? Was it to kill Lady Tianqin? If that was the case, wouldn't she, the surviving child, be in danger? This was the only clue. Han Yunshi looked at Han Kongan anxiously. However, Han Kongan lowered his head. What's the matter? Han Yunshi was anxious. Han Kongan was silent for a moment before he lifted his head and said, "The poison scar on your face wasn't there when you were born." It was poisoned by old man, what? Han Yunshi flew into a rage. She didn't expect it to be like this. Han Kongan avoided Han Yunshi's furious gaze and said calmly, "Your mother is dead. What's the use of keeping you?" To him, Han Yunshi was just someone else's flesh and blood. She had nothing to do with him. However, a child like her was destined to be Qin Wangfei. Not only did he have to raise her, he had to love and pamper her as if she was his ancestor. If Lady Tianqin was still around, perhaps Han Kongan could tolerate it. However, Lady Tianqin was suddenly gone. How could Han Kongan tolerate it? Not only could he not tolerate it, but he also hated Han Yunshi. If it wasn't for this child, Lady Tianqin wouldn't have died. This child couldn't be killed or abandoned. His only way was to destroy her and her looks. He wouldn't allow her to study medicine. In this way, the Empress Dowager could only give up on her. Indeed, when the Empress Dowager found out that Han Yunshi was an ugly girl, she observed for a period of time. Then, when she found out that Han Yunshi didn't have any talent in medicine, although she didn't cancel the engagement, she lost all hope. After all, the Empress Dowager had hoped that Lady Tianqin could give birth to a woman as miraculous as Lady Tianqin. Because of the engagement, Han Kongan had always raised Han Yunshi as a servant. He even hoped that there would be a young miss in the estate to take Han Yunshi's place in the marriage. Unfortunately, he took on the Crown Prince's troublesome case and earned the Empress Dowager's hatred. He didn't dare to mention the matter of a substitute marriage anymore. Han Yunshi finally saw through Han Kongan. Cold amusement hung on her lips. Han Kongan, what's the use of keeping me? Do you dare say that you're a director of the medical academy without my mother's help? You hypocrite who bites the hand that feeds you. Although Lady Tianqin was dead, she still fulfilled her promise and made Han Kongan a director of the medical academy. It was because of this title that the Han family had reaped so many benefits over the years. Otherwise, with so many medical families in Tianing country, why would the Han family be the most outstanding? Han Yunshi stood up. She believed in Han Kongan's words today, but she still looked down on him. Doctors valued medical ethics above all else. However, if a person didn't even have the most basic morals, how could they talk about professional ethics? Seeing Han Yunshi's reaction, Han Kongan stood up in shock. Han Yunshi, I've told you everything I know. Do you want to go back on your word? Chapter 76. Go back on her word. Han Yunshi looked at Han Kongan coldly and leaned over to take the storehouse key from his hand. You're thinking too much. Since it was something she had agreed to, she naturally wouldn't go back on her word. Moreover, this matter wasn't a small matter. Saving the Han family and saving the 3 generations of the Han family had the same logic. There were at least 100 people in the Han family and not all of them were evil people. There was no lack of kind and innocent people. Moreover, the Han family's medical skills needed to be passed down and they needed to save more patients. Thinking back, the reason why Madame Tianxin chose Han Kongan wasn't because of Han Kongan, but because of the Han family. Han Yunxi wouldn't put this matter first, but she would try her best. Seeing that Han Yunxi had accepted the storehouse key, Han Kongan was much more relieved. He was also very clear that he had committed such a serious crime. Although he could avoid the death penalty, he couldn't escape punishment. He was afraid that he would have to stay in prison forever in this lifetime. Han Yunxi didn't want to talk to this person anymore and turned to leave. However, Han Kongan called out to her, "Han Yunxi, wait." Han Yunxi stopped and didn't even turn back. "What advice do you have for me?" Han Yunxi, the Crown Prince's illness. Han Kongan paused for a moment before continuing in a firm tone, "Old man firmly believes that his diagnosis wasn't wrong." Han Yunxi was slightly stunned and thought that although this fellow was abominable, his medical skills were still impressive. However, she didn't intend to reply and continued to walk forward. However, Han Kongan chased after her and blocked the door of the prison cell. "The matter has already been settled. I just want to know the truth." Han Yunxi's lips curled into a mocking smile. "Divine Dr. Han, think about it carefully. With your outstanding talent, I believe that you will understand very quickly." As Han Yunxi spoke, she pushed his hand away and strode out of the prison cell and personally locked the door. "I don't understand." Han Kongan's voice was raised by a few decibels and he was very agitated. Han Yunxi looked indifferent. "If you don't understand, then think about it carefully." After she finished speaking, she resolutely turned around and left. Not telling Han Kongan the truth could also be considered a form of punishment for him. Presumably, he would always be brooding over it. Han Yunxi didn't feel guilty. Han Kongan deserved all of this. If he had a grateful heart, he would have raised her like a daughter. Then, today, even if she had to risk her life, she would definitely save him. Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. And just now, she did not see any guilt in Han Kongan's eyes. Walking in the cold and deep corridor, Han Yunxi hugged her arms, lowered her head, and fell into deep thought. What was the truth behind his mother's death? Who was her father? So many years had passed, where should she begin her investigation? Where should she begin her search in this vast sea of people? Why did Lady Tianxin get pregnant and marry someone else? Was it because of desperation, or was there no other choice? She was such a legendary woman who had stunned an entire generation after living in Tianning's capital for less than a year. Under what circumstances did she get pregnant without marriage? Or perhaps she was already married before coming to the Han estate. Was her father still alive? Did he know of her existence? Many questions perplexed Han Yunxi. The more she knew, the more questions she had. In the end, she sighed and put away the storehouse key that symbolized the head of the Han family. If she had time, she should go take a look at the Han estate's old haunt. Of course, the Han estate was currently in chaos. Han Yunxi was in no mood to join in on the fun, so she decided to let those unkind and sinister madams fight amongst themselves first. After leaving the prisons, Han Yunxi was depressed. She wandered aimlessly through the streets until night fell before returning to the Duke of Qin's estate. When Emperor Tianhui issued a general amnesty, he also revealed the truth about the Crown Prince's strange illness. 3 days later, the Crown Prince returned to court to participate in court affairs. The Crown Prince was the heir apparent. Once he stepped out of the mountains, Tianning's court would be filled with turbulent undercurrents. Although Han Yunxi's success in curing the crown prince hadn't been made public, the news had long spread in the upper circles. There were more people who resented Han Yunxi than thanked Han Yunxi. Of course, most of them had a whole new level of respect for her. Han Yunxi didn't notice any of this. She spent the next few days cooped up in the hibiscus courtyard. Long Fei Yi hadn't returned for days. Grand concubine Yi had probably been angered by her last visit, but she didn't come to make trouble. None of the servants dared to slight her, so Han Yunxi's days were better than before. But in the end, she was preoccupied with Lady Tianqin's affairs. Every time she asked about the Han family, she was told that so-and-so had gotten into a fight with so-and-so, or that so-and-so had run away again. Of course, the three madams of the Han family wouldn't run away. They fought until their heads bled for the position of head of house while trying to find ways to see Han Kongan. Unfortunately, they had no way to do so. Even if they used silver, they couldn't find him. Today, Han Yunxi was flipping through the introduction to Dragon Sky Medical Academy when little Chen Xiang came to report. Mistress, I heard that someone from the medical academy went to the Han family and removed the head of the Han family from his position as a medical academy director. They also took away his command medallion. This was something she'd long expected. Han Yunxi had purposely flipped through the medical academy's introduction to look for clues. Perhaps Lady Tianqin had helped Han Kongan become a director because of her connections in the medical academy. Because of this matter, she went to the prison again. Helpless, Han Kongan actually said that Madame Tianqin had only taught him medical skills. After marrying him for less than a year, she died. The reason why he could become a director of the medical academy was mostly due to his own efforts. Han Yunxi was so angry that she didn't want to see him anymore. If she wanted to investigate the medical academy, she should be able to find Gu Beiyue to help her out. She assumed that Gu Beiyue was a busy man who needed to make an appointment in advance to see him. Unexpectedly, Han Yunxi had someone deliver a letter to the Gu Beiyue in the morning, saying that Gu Beiyue could see her in the afternoon. The two of them arranged to meet at Tianning's capital city's largest tea house, Immortal Ming House. As soon as she saw Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi was startled. She couldn't help but think of a line from a poem. The youth's face was like jade. Whose family's young master was unparalleled. She didn't expect that Gu Beiyue would look so good after taking off his simple medical robes and revealing his spotless white robes. If not for the calm and indifferent look in his eyes, Han Yunxi would have suspected that she'd mistaken him for someone else. His white robes reflected off his snow-white skin, clean temperament, and otherworldly elegance. His gentleness was not feminine or feminine. Instead, it was indescribably masculine. It was like perfume. Once one smelled it, they would feel at ease and unforgettable. Han Yunxi had once joked that Gu Beiyue gave people the impression of a Buddha. Gu Beiyue had laughed and shook his head, saying that he wasn't fat. The woman's looks were enough to topple cities, while the man was handsome beyond compare. As soon as they entered the tea house, they attracted many gazes. Of course, no one knew their identities. The two of them had a tacit understanding to remain calm and composed, especially Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi hesitated for a long time before hiding her identity. She only asked Gu Beiyue a few things about Cloud Realm Medical Academy before seriously asking about Han Kongan's experience as a director. From Gu Beiyue, Han Yunxi learned that the medical academy's director candidates were directly selected, while the directors were elected from among the candidates. 3 years after Lady Tianqin's death, Han Kongan was nominated as a director candidate because of his family's prestige and personal medical skills. 6 years later, he officially became a director. Lady Tianqin had promised him 10 years, and he really did become a director 10 years later. By the time he became a director, grandfather and I had already left the medical academy, so we don't know the details. But he was the youngest candidate in the medical academy's history, as well as the youngest director. Gu Beiyue paused for a while before adding, the competition for the director position is very fierce. Even if you become a director candidate, there are plenty of people who can't get elected for 10 or 20 years, or even their entire lives. Although he didn't say it out loud, Han Yunxi understood that Han Konggen's medical skills were outstanding, but compared to other experts, he wasn't the most outstanding. There were too many directors in the medical academy, and they were all seniors who were over 100 years old. Even the candidates had many white hairs. Wasn't Han Konggen's path too smooth? Who were the people who promoted him back then? Han Yunxi asked again. Gu Beiyue could only shake his head. This is a secret. I'm afraid even Han Konggen himself doesn't know. So that was the case. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of Han Konggen. Seeing her frown, Gu Beiyue's lips curled into a smile that no one noticed. He said mildly, I'll try to get someone to investigate, but I might not be able to find anything. This fellow really had his ways. This time, Han Yunxi smiled. She tossed the teacup on the table and said cheerfully, then I'll thank you in advance. I'll definitely treat you to a drink another day. Gu Beiyue wasn't used to Han Yunxi's tone. He only felt that this wasn't like a Wang Fei. She didn't have any of the elegance and nobility that a proper Wang Fei should have. However, it was precisely this unpretentious free and easy attitude of hers that attracted him. Gu Beiyue thought that if Han Yunxi wasn't born in the Han family and wasn't a Qin Wang Fei, she would definitely be able to fly even higher. However, these were all hidden in his heart. He just smiled and agreed without saying anything. It was rare for them to meet outside, so the two sat until evening. Han Yunxi found that Gu Beiyue seemed to be very taciturn, but there wasn't any awkward silence when they chatted. They talked about medical skills, medicine, and many cases. Han Yunxi sometimes seriously pondered, and sometimes laughed loudly. However, Gu Beiyue always had a faint smile on his face, appearing especially refined. It wasn't until little Qin Xiang ran over to remind her that Han Yunxi realized that time had passed so quickly. The sky was almost dark. Let's meet another day. I still need to ask you about that case. Han Yunxi's poison skills were exquisite, but her medical skills were lacking in many areas. The studious her grabbed onto Gu Beiyue and didn't want to let go. She wanted nothing more than to bring him home as a private tutor. Wang Fei Nyang, this is actually overstepping the rules. Gu Beiyue couldn't help but remind her in a low voice. After leaving the Duke of Qin's manor, the rules were all nonsense to Han Yunxi. The more magnanimous a person was, the less they were afraid of ambiguity. However, the more they cared, the more they had ulterior motives. A trace of craftiness flashed through her clear eyes as she said in a low voice, on the 15th of every month, let's meet here. You're not Imperial Physician Gu, and I'm not Qin Wang Fei. Let's travel together and compare our medical skills. How about it? Compare their medical skills. This girl wanted to learn medicine from him. She wanted to learn medicine from him but didn't reveal her poison skills. Gu Beiyue saw through it with a glance, but didn't point it out. On the 15th of every month, they would forget each other's identities and talk about medicine. What a beautiful thing this was. Unfortunately, the gentle Gu Beiyue was always rational. He smiled warmly, Wang Fei Nyang really knows how to joke. It's late, let's go back. Gu Beiyue. Han Yunxi suddenly frowned. She thought he would agree, but she didn't expect this guy to refuse. Wang Fei Nyang, this subject can't leave the palace as he pleases. Let's go back. Gu Beiyue was still smiling. That smile seemed warm, but it contained a kind of firmness that made everyone unable to do anything about it. Han Yunxi was very unwilling, but she could only give up. She casually waved her hand as a farewell. Chapter 77. When she went downstairs, little Chen Xiang opened her mouth. "Mistress, you're confused. What's wrong?" Han Yunqi lazily asked. "Mistress, you're Qin Wangfei, you. Little Chen Xiang had always thought that her mistress was very smart, but now she couldn't help but worry about her brain. She pulled her mistress's hand and whispered in her ear, "You're a married woman, and you're even a prince's official consort. If this matter reaches Qin Wang's ears, you'll be finished." Little Chen Xiang was a bit stupid, but she was still very sensitive on some matters. Han Yunqi helplessly rolled her eyes. Of course she understood these things. She wasn't meeting a lover in secret, but simply felt that Gu Beiyue was someone she could make friends with. She'd asked him out for a chat, that's all. Moreover, she wasn't here to amuse herself or flirt with him, but to ask him for help. Besides, she and Long Feiyi were only in name. Long Feiyi even hugged another woman in front of her, saved another woman, and abandoned her without a care for her. When she thought of Duan Miao's matter, Han Yunqi was still a bit unable to let it go. "Mistress, are you listening?" Little Chen Xiang was very serious. "I didn't do anything. Don't be so anxious, okay? You make it sound like I'm having an affair." Han Yunqi couldn't stand it anymore. Her relationship with Gu Beiyue was purely friendship. Unexpectedly, just as she was talking, her footsteps came to an abrupt halt, and she almost fell down. She saw a tall and proud figure enter the door. It was very familiar. Long Feiyi. Although he'd purposely tried to keep a low profile, Han Yunqi still recognized him at a glance. Han Yunqi, who was magnanimous just a moment ago, subconsciously turned around and ran upstairs. Little Chen Xiang followed. When they reached upstairs, she peeked down. Seeing that Long Feiyi didn't come up, she let out a big sigh of relief. Little Chen Xiang looked at her with astonishment. "Mistress, what are you guilty of?" I. There are too many people like you who would let their imaginations run wild. I'd better be careful." Han Yunqi made an excuse. In fact, her body reacted faster than her head. She also realized it later. Why did she run? Gu Beiyue hadn't left yet. Seeing this scene, he didn't go forward. Instead, a faint smile appeared on his lips, revealing a hint of helplessness. After Han Yunqi calmed down, she remembered that Gu Beiyue was still upstairs. However, when she turned around to look, he was gone. Where is he? Han Yunqi was puzzled. Little Chen Xiang helped to look around but did not see anyone. "Mistress, that's not right. We obviously left first. There was only one staircase, and they had been guarding the staircase ever since they came back. How could Gu Beiyue go down first?" Han Yunqi was suspicious. Finally, when she saw the staircase leading to the third floor, she didn't think much about it. She just assumed that Gu Beiyue went upstairs. However, she didn't know that Gu Beiyue was at the inn's entrance. He looked back at the second floor, smiled faintly, and turned around. His figure was like an illusion, disappearing all of a sudden. Since they had returned, Han Yunqi simply waited until Long Feiyi left before she went downstairs. Along the way in the carriage, little Chen Xiang wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. Han Yunqi pursed her lips and looked out of the window. The atmosphere between master and servant was particularly strange. Returning to Hibiscus Garden, she saw that the light in Long Feiyi's bedroom was lit. Seeing her mistress look over, little Chen Xiang finally couldn't help but laugh. Who knew that once she started laughing, she couldn't stop? Han Yunqi flew into a rage out of humiliation and pinched her. "You damn girl, what are you laughing at? Go back." Saying that, she left before little Chen Xiang left. That night, for some reason, Han Yunqi couldn't sleep. She wrapped herself in the quilt and leaned against the bed, staring blankly at the light in Long Fei Ye's bedroom. In fact, she had taken little Chen Xiang's reminder today to heart. Although she had married into the Duke of Qin's household for some time, she suddenly felt that she was already a married woman today. Although it was only in name, this name alone would bind her for the rest of her life. Long Fei Yi could remarry, but she could never remarry. As she thought about it, Han Yunxi suddenly shook her head. What was she thinking about? It was good enough that she could live peacefully. Why was she thinking so much? Han Yunxi didn't fall asleep until daybreak. She slept until the afternoon. A few days had passed. Although the Han family's matter was still being discussed on the streets, the limelight was no longer as great. Han Yunxi touched the storehouse key in her sleeve, thinking that it was time for her to make a trip to the Han family. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to leave, young General Mu Qingwu came to seek an audience. As soon as she saw Mu Qingwu, Han Yunxi teased, "Young General, I heard that Princess Changping has been very busy recently." After the injury on Princess Changping's face healed, she was worried about being laughed at, so she used the excuse of avoiding the cold to play in the south. Otherwise, she really might have pestered Mu Qingwu all the way here. Mu Qingwu was a bit helpless. He smiled and avoided answering, but said seriously, "Qin Wangfei, this one came to, hemming and hawing wasn't like this young general's style." What was it that he couldn't say when the words were already at his mouth? "If young general has something to say, please say it." Han Yunxi was puzzled. For this guy to come to the Duke of Qin's residence to look for her, it should be something important. There is indeed something. It's about the 10,000 snake poison that I was afflicted with. Esteemed Wang Fei said that this is a slow-acting poison that accumulates over a long period of time. However, my father and I have investigated and still haven't found the person who poisoned me. So, today, I came to invite esteemed Wang Fei to the residence and military camp to take a look. Although Mu Qingwu was a magnanimous military general, when it came to asking for help, he instantly turned into a shy boy. He had a guilty conscience. Firstly, one wouldn't visit a temple without a cause. Secondly, he had already told Han Yunxi to speak up if she needed anything. Now that he hadn't helped Han Yunxi with anything, he had instead come to cause trouble for her. So it was because of this. Han Yunxi didn't think much of it. Actually, she had thought about this matter before. After all, the 10,000 snake poison wasn't an easy poison to use. It was just that she had been so busy recently that she had forgotten about it. After hesitating for a moment, Han Yunxi asked, "How did you investigate?" "We interrogated the kitchens, personal maidservants, and attendants." Mu Qingwu answered truthfully. Mu Qingwu's life was very simple. If it wasn't at home, it was at the military camp. The only people who could get close to him and poison him were these people. Although interrogation wasn't the best method, it was still a method of investigation. In terms of personnel in the residence and the military camp, have there been any changes recently? Han Yunxi asked again. The news that she had cured Mu Qingwu's poison had long spread. Moreover, she had interrogated the servants in the great general's residence. The person who had poisoned him would definitely be wary and take action. None of them, so... Mu Qingwu really wanted to tell Han Yunxi that the Duke of Qin had also asked about this matter. However, the Duke of Qin had said that it must be kept a secret. After thinking for a while, he decided not to say it. "So I can only ask for your help. I'm not a great detective." Han Yunxi smiled helplessly. It was already very embarrassing to come to their doorstep and ask for help. When Han Yunxi said this, Mu Qingwu didn't know what to say. He scratched his head, his emotions written all over his face. Looking at him acting like a big boy, Han Yunxi couldn't help but imagine him bravely killing enemies on the battlefield. She couldn't help but feel that the contrast was too great. Han Yunxi could only open her mouth to break his awkwardness. She asked, "Then what exactly do you want me to do by asking me to go?" She really wasn't a great detective. The poison had already been administered and now it had been cured. Even if she went, she wouldn't be able to use her skills. 10,000 snake poison is a rare poison. You are much more familiar with it than we are. Perhaps you can find some clues. Mu Qingwu answered seriously. Actually, coming to find Han Yunxi could be considered their last attempt. However, these words seemed to have reminded Han Yunxi of something. A complicated look flashed in her eyes. After pondering for a while, Han Yunxi didn't ask any more questions. She quickly agreed and seriously said, "How about this? I'll go to the manor first thing tomorrow morning to take a look. Just treat it as me coming for a visit. Don't make a fuss, so as to avoid alerting the enemy." Han Yunxi felt that it wasn't easy to poison someone in the military. If they wanted to find clues, they would have to go to the general's manor. After all, the people in the manor were much more complicated than the soldiers in the barracks. Hearing this, Mu Qingwu was immediately overjoyed. He quickly stood up and cupped his hands in greeting. He was very serious. "Many thanks, Princess Consort. If there is a need in the future, I ask that Princess Consort." Before he could finish speaking, Han Yunxi helplessly cut him off. "Young general, if you keep saying this, you're treating me like an outsider. Could it be that you want to make a deal with me?" He had already said this the last time he came back. Mu Qingwu had never begged anyone before in his life. In a moment of awkwardness, he quickly bowed. "Qin Wangfei, this official definitely didn't mean it that way. Only AI. Sorry to trouble Qin Wangfei." The more Han Yunxi looked at him, the more she found him amusing. She didn't have any intention of befriending Mu Qingwu, but since he had come knocking on her door, this kind of friendship was still possible. After all, the general's manor was not a small power in the court. In this era where one's birth was greater than the heavens and one's birth determined one's fate, her maiden family was already like that. She should at least find some friends for herself and find some backing. After Mu Qingwu left, Han Yunxi thought of his serious words, "If there is a need in the future, please ask," and couldn't help smiling. She didn't take these words to heart, but Mu Qingwu would use his entire life to fulfill this promise. Of course, this was a story for another time. The next day, early in the morning, Rong Jing brought Chen Xiang to the General Mu's manor. Han Yunxi directly went to Mu Qingwu's courtyard. General Mu was also specially waiting for her. "Qin Wangfei, the person who poisoned us must be a traitor." General Mu's mood was very solemn. If it wasn't for the fact that the 10,000 snake poison was triggered by the young general's poison, the person who poisoned us would have to wait a few more years for the poison to take effect. Han Yunxi said indifferently. In order to find the person who poisoned us, there were two aspects to consider. One was the method of poisoning and the poison's effect, and the other was the source of the poison. Let's talk about the first aspect first, the method of poisoning and the poison's effect. Although the 10,000 snake poison was highly toxic, it was also a slow-acting poison. The reason why it was highly toxic was because once it took effect, one would definitely lose their life within 2 hours. The reason why it was a slow-acting poison was because the 10,000 snake poison had to be hidden in the body for many years, bit by bit, before it would take effect. Therefore, the person who was able to poison us bit by bit over the years was definitely someone who frequently came into contact with Mu Qingwu. Mu Qingwu took out a list of names. "Qin Wangfei, take a look. The names of the servants in the manor who can get close to me are all here. Everyone has been interrogated, and they are all still locked up." General Mu and his late wife were deeply in love and didn't have any concubines. Therefore, excluding General Mu and Mu Luyue, the only people who could get close to Mu Qingwu were the servants. Han Yunxi skimmed through the list and found that there weren't many people. Including the people in the kitchens, there were only 7 or 8. Chapter 78. Han Yunxi had never interrogated anyone before. Since General Mu had already interrogated him, she thought that it would be useless for her to interrogate him again. Since she was sure that he was a traitor, she could only find evidence. Glancing at the name list in her hand, Han Yunxi said indifferently, "Let's go. I'll search around first. Perhaps there will be some clues." As long as there were remnants of the poison in the general's manor, she would definitely be able to find it. Han Yunxi first checked everything in Mu Qingwu's room, including a few cans of tea leaves sent over from the military camp. Following that, General Mu and Mu Qingwu led the way. They first went to the kitchens. All of the meals in the general's manor came from there, so this place was the most suspicious. General Mu and Mu Qingwu originally thought that Han Yunxi would search for a long time. They did not expect that she would only walk around the kitchens once before walking out. "No," Han Yunxi said indifferently. "Qin Wangfei, are you sure?" General Mu's face was full of suspicion. 100% sure. "Let's go to the water room." Han Yunxi was very confident. Although it was inconceivable, after seeing Han Yunxi's detoxification skills, General Mu had to believe it even if he didn't want to. Mu Qingwu basically did not suspect Han Yunxi. If asked why, he could only say that he would not suspect someone who had saved his life. The water room was as important as the kitchens. Han Yunxi activated the scanning system and walked around. She even carefully checked the 3 wells in the courtyard. Unfortunately, she did not find anything in the water room. Following that, they searched the residences and personal belongings of the suspects on the name list. After going through all the rooms, Han Yunxi was about to leave when she saw Mu Luiyue walking over. She looked coldly at Han Yunxi, a disdainful smile on her lips. "Impudent, don't you know how to greet Qin Wangfei? What are you waiting for?" the general reprimanded. Mu Luiyue reluctantly saluted. However, the sarcasm on her lips did not weaken. Instead, it became more obvious. Han Yunxi came to investigate the mole who poisoned her. She found it ridiculous when she knew about it. This woman was only skilled in medicine. So what if she had saved her brother and the crown prince? After being praised by others, did she really think that she was very powerful and knew everything? Mu Luiyue was supposed to go out today. Once she knew that Han Yunxi was coming, she specially waited for her. "Qin Wangfei, you are so powerful. You must have found some clues, right?" Mu Luiyue asked with a cold smile. They didn't find anything in the kitchen and the water room, and now only this side yard was left. Although Mu Luiyue's tone was a little harsh, General Mu and young master also wanted to know the result. Mu Qingwu fiercely glared at Mu Luiyue before turning to Han Yunxi and saying, "Princess Consort, how is it?" "Nothing." Han Yunxi was very calm. She only said that she would search first. She didn't promise that she would find any clues. If there wasn't anything, then there wasn't anything. What was there to be embarrassed about? However, Mu Luiyue chuckled and immediately covered her mouth. "Qin Wangfei, I'm not laughing at you. Don't misunderstand." Han Yunxi's lips curled into a cold smile. She didn't even look at her. She didn't care and walked out. The moment she walked out, Mu Qingwu grabbed Mu Luiyue's wrist and sternly said, "Stinky girl, that's enough. There's nothing for you to do here. Go back to where you came from." Mu Luiyue fiercely flung his hand away and deliberately shouted outside, "What, you don't even allow people to laugh? If you have the ability, then convince people wholeheartedly. If you don't have the ability, then why are you showing off?" As soon as she finished speaking, Mu Qingwu covered her mouth. Unexpectedly, Mu Luiyue bit Mu Qingwu's hand and pushed him away. She continued to shout, "If you don't have the ability, then why are you afraid of people talking about you?" Although Han Yunxi had already walked far away, she still heard these words. General Mu, who was accompanying her, turned green. He was about to turn around to teach her a lesson when Han Yunxi stopped him. She personally turned around and walked over. When she saw Han Yunxi, Mu Qingwu forcefully covered Mu Luiyue's mouth and explained, "This girl is crazy and spouting nonsense. Your Highness Princess Consort, please don't take it to heart." Mu Luiyue was after all Mu Qingwu's biological younger sister and General Mu's biological daughter. Although Mu Qingwu was explaining, he was actually pleading for leniency for Mu Luiyue. He was afraid that Han Yunxi would be angered and punish Mu Luiyue for her disrespect. No matter how bad Mu Luiyue was, she was still his biological younger sister. And no matter how good she was still an outsider. Han Yunxi could see this point clearly. Since she was here today, she naturally wouldn't part on bad terms with General Mu's residents just because of Mu Luiyue's unpleasant words. Moreover, Han Yunxi was well aware that despite her noble status, she had no real power in her hands to suppress others. Without Long Fei Ye's full approval, the title of Qin Wangfei was nothing more than an empty title. So what if she saved the crown prince? Who would truly recognize her as Qin Wangfei? Leaving aside Grand Concubine Yi, even if Murong Wanru was here today, Mu Luiyue wouldn't dare to be so arrogant no matter how dissatisfied she was. If not for her life-saving grace, General Mu and his son wouldn't have treated her with such respect either. If one wanted to live with status and dignity, they had to rely on themselves in the end. Han Yunxi waved a hand to indicate that Mu Qingwu should let go. A little worried, Mu Qingwu gave Mu Luiyue a warning look before releasing her. Mu Luiyue wasn't stupid and wouldn't continue speaking rudely in front of Han Yunxi. She stood in front of Han Yunxi with a face full of smiles as she thought to herself, "Han Yunxi, my father and big brother are still protecting me in the end. What can you do to me? At worst, I'll be punished or beaten again. This young lady isn't afraid. Today, this young lady just wants to humiliate you." Han Yunxi looked coldly at Mu Luiyue before smiling calmly. "Mu Luiyue, do you think this Wang Fei won't be able to find the culprit?" "Luiyue doesn't dare. Qin Wangfei is a wondrous person, a godly person. There's nothing in this world that's harder than Qin Wangfei," Mu Luiyue purposely said sarcastically. On the side, General Mu and Mu Qingwu's faces were deathly pale. General Mu couldn't hold it in any longer as he angrily said, "Mu Luiyue, this has nothing to do with you." Scram! Mu Luiyue's words had already thoroughly angered Han Yunxi. Last time, she had only suffered a few lashes from General Mu, which was already considered lucky. She never thought that she would dare to take a mile after taking an inch. She had a status but no power, so she didn't want to cause trouble. Did Mu Luiyue really think that she was so easy to bully? Han Yunxi stopped General Mu and said with a faint smile, "Mu Luiyue, do you dare to make a bet with Wang Fei regarding the matter of the traitor? Whoever loses, will take off their outer clothes and run around Xuanwu Street. How about it?" This bet was too big. General Mu and Mu Qingwu were both dumbstruck. They never thought that the dignified Qin Wangfei would actually think of this kind of bet. Mu Luiyue was first stunned, but then she became excited. Afraid that Han Yunxi would beat her to it, she hurriedly said, "Of course I dare. I bet that you won't be able to find the traitor." The general's estate had already been searching for the traitor for a month. Because this matter concerned her brother's safety, the emperor had secretly ordered several divine detectives from the Supreme Court to investigate. Unfortunately, there were no results. Mu Luiyue felt that her brother's head had been kicked by a donkey when he asked Han Yunxi for help. Han Yunxi had only come to show off. Did she really think that she could do whatever she wanted just because she knew a bit of medical skills? What a joke. Of course she had to bet. When the time came, she would have Han Yunxi take off her outer clothes and run around Xuanwu Street. After doing such a disgraceful thing, it would be enough for His Highness Duke of Qin to divorce her. Because it was an appointed marriage, if the princess consort was innocent and died, then the position of princess consort would forever be empty. However, if it was because the princess consort had violated the 3 obediences and 4 virtues and made a big mistake, then after divorcing the princess consort, the Duke of Qin could still marry another princess consort. Murong Wanru hoped that Han Yunxi would die, and Mu Luiyue wished that Han Yunxi would be divorced. Seeing Mu Luiyue so confident, a trace of craftiness flashed through Han Yunxi's eyes. She said seriously, "All right. If this princess consort finds the traitor, then it's your loss." 1 month. Do you dare? Mu Luiyue provoked. Of course she had to set a time limit. 1 month seemed a little short. However, Han Yunxi still readily agreed. This time, finding the traitor was less important than convincing this eldest miss wholeheartedly. She had to personally teach this arrogant and unreasonable eldest miss a lesson so that the next time she saw her, she would take a detour. If you can't find the traitor within a month, then it's your loss. Mu Luiyue asked seriously, wanting Han Yunxi to give her a definite answer. May the great general bear witness. Han Yunxi looked towards the head of the great general's estate. Although General Mu was somewhat disappointed that they hadn't found anything after walking around today, no matter what the result was, he didn't want his daughter to lose face, nor did he want Qin Wangfei to lose face. Esteemed Wangfei, I think we should forget about this bet. After all, the matter of the traitor, who knew that before he could finish speaking, Mu Luiyue interrupted, "Father, this is what esteemed Wangfei said she wanted to bet." We can't dampen esteemed Wangfei's mood. You're still talking. General Mu was so angry that he almost lashed out with his whip. Mu Luiyue was a little afraid and took a step back. However, she looked at Han Yunxi provocatively, afraid that she would regret it. Great General, it's said that a monarch doesn't go back on his words. Although this Wangfei is a woman, she is still the Qin Wangfei. How can I go back on my words? Han Yunxi asked seriously. Now that things had come to this, Han Yunxi had brought out her prestige as a Wangfei, but General Mu was anxious. He couldn't afford to take responsibility no matter who won or lost. Esteemed Wangfei, for this old official's sake, please, before he could finish speaking, who knew that Mu Qingwu would speak up, "Father, Luiyue has already agreed. She can't go back on her words." Mu Qingwu's words surprised Han Yunxi. It seemed that he had had enough of this spoiled little sister of his. Very good, this fellow didn't disappoint her. General Mu looked at Mu Qingwu and then saw Han Yunxi's cold and stern expression. He had no choice but to agree. Seeing her father nod, Mu Luiyue was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to write a letter to Princess Changping and tell her the good news. She wanted Princess Changping to hurry back to the capital to see the joke. However, Mu Luiyue quickly discovered that she was happy too early. General Mu, since we can't find any clues in the estate, there's only one way. Han Yunxi said seriously. When these words came out, Mu Luiyue looked over with a frown. Seeing Han Yunxi's indifferent expression, she felt a little nervous. Esteemed Wangfei, please speak. General Mu was also nervous. Find the source. Han Yunxi seriously said. The source. Mu Qingwu didn't understand. The source of the poison. Han Yunxi indifferently said. The 10,000 poisonous snake was a very rare poison. It was a mixture of the 10 most poisonous snake venoms in the world. The reason why it was called 10,000 poisonous snake wasn't because it was made from the venom of 10,000 snakes. Rather, it was because the 10 most poisonous snake venoms in the world were equal to the venom of 10,000 normal snakes. Just this name alone was enough to show how terrifying it was. To make this kind of poison wasn't a simple matter. Not only did one need to know the proportions, the most important thing was to find the 10 most poisonous snakes and extract their venom. Although medicine and poison were of the same family and a large amount of medicine could become a poison and a small amount of poison could become a medicine, these were all special circumstances. There was still a strict distinction between medicine and poison. However, these 10 snake venoms were special cases. Since they were highly toxic, they could be used to treat a few rare diseases. Chapter 79. It was indeed difficult to find all 10 types of snake venom, but it was relatively easy to find a few of them. General, 7 of the 10 types of snake venom can be used as medicine and can be sold in large pharmacies. The remaining 3 types are very rare snake venoms. If it's confirmed that the person who poisoned you is someone close to the young general, then within 2 to 3 years, this trader will definitely buy snake venom to concoct a poison. This type of poison can only be stored for a day at most. A day. When Han Yunxi said this, General Mu was shocked. This was a clue, and a very important one at that. Mu Qingwu was overjoyed. Qin Wangfei, please write down the names of the 10 types of snake venom. This official will immediately investigate. Han Yunxi's words stunned Mu Luyue, but surprised General Mu and his son. Although the stakes were high, compared to finding the traitor, it wasn't that high. Every day that the traitor wasn't found was another day that Mu Qingwu and even General Mu would be in danger. Moreover, this matter could possibly involve the northernly spies, so they couldn't be careless. Mu Qingwu had long disliked Mu Luyue and couldn't wait for her to be taught a lesson. As for General Mu, he couldn't care less for the time being. Finding the traitor was the most important thing. Everything else could be discussed later. Han Yunxi only wrote down the names of 7 types of snake venom and left the other 3. Qin Wangfei, aren't there 10? Mu Qingwu asked, puzzled. Find these 7 first. See which pharmacies sell them and if anyone has bought them. Investigate clearly first. I have my own arrangements for the rest. Han Yunxi said seriously. Mu Qingwu was a smart person and didn't pursue the matter. At this time, Mu Luyue watched from the back and couldn't help but worry. However, worry was just worry. Han Yunxi was only guessing. The results of the investigation were still unknown. Mu Luyue refused to believe it. She wanted to immediately write a letter to Princess Chongping. That day, after Han Yunxi left, Mu Qingwu personally went to investigate the matter. He spent 3 days investigating all the big and small pharmacies in the imperial city. Just as Han Yunxi said, many pharmacies sold these medicines. However, the results of the investigation were still beyond his expectations. 3 days later, Mu Qingwu paid another visit to the Duke of Qin's manor. Princess Consort, out of the 32 pharmacies in the city, there are a total of 10 pharmacies that sell snake venom, but... Mu Qingwu frowned and said seriously, however, the shopkeepers of these pharmacies said that this snake venom is not commonly used. If it is not for a special prescription, no doctor would dare to prescribe this kind of snake venom. 8 out of the 10 pharmacies had never sold any of the 7 snake poisons. As for the remaining 2, they had only sold it once, and that was 5 or 6 years ago. The 10,000 snake venom had accumulated in Mu Qingwu's body for 3 years at most. In other words, the traitor hadn't bought snake venom from the pharmacies. Princess Consort, could it be that the traitor brought the snake venom from somewhere else and made the 10,000 snake venom in the manor? Mu Qingwu guessed. However, Han Yunxi decisively shook her head. If it was brought over, it would be enough to use. This is poison. Bringing a large amount of poison with them is definitely not something a trader would do. Or, someone sent it over, or even made it before sending it to the great general's manor. Mu Qinggu continued to guess. This kind of slow-acting poison usually needed to be made once every 2 to 3 days. The made poison could only be stored for a day, or else it would have a smell and color. In 3 years, they sent things to the great general's manor so frequently. Han Yunxi was deep in thought. The great general's manor was different from other mansions. The great general and young general lived here. In modern times, this would be a military compound and could be considered an important military office. Half of the servants here were soldiers and the other half were ordinary servants. No matter if it was soldiers or ordinary servants, they weren't allowed to enter and leave as they pleased. Suddenly, Mu Qingwu's eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "Old Li who collects rancid water, and old Wang who pours out night incense. These two people didn't come here every 2 or 3 days, but every day." Although it was just a guess, it was better than having no direction. "Young general, follow this lead and investigate. I'll investigate the origins of the other 3 snake venoms." Han Yunxi said seriously. "Yes, if there's anything, this subordinate will report to you at any time." Mu Qinggu stood up and stood in a super-standard military posture. He cupped his fists, bowed, and gave orders. These actions were done cleanly and nimbly, full of masculine strength. Although this guy was young and didn't have much experience, there weren't many people in the imperial court who could accept such a big bow. Mu Qinggu was about to leave when Han Yunxi called him back. "Young general, in the future when there's no one around, there's no need to be so polite. Also, don't call me Princess Consort this and that. Just call me by my name." Mu Qingwu's resolute expression froze for a moment before he became suspicious. He reached out to scratch his head, revealing his big boy appearance again. "Esteemed Princess Consort, what did you say?" Han Yunxi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Forget it. He was such a disciplined person, she shouldn't make things difficult for him. "Nothing, you can go." Han Yunxi could only give up. After Mu Qingwu left, she immediately had Chen Xiang go to the Gu Manor to pass on a message to Gu Beiyue. She only had a month's time, so the quickest and most accurate way to solve the case was to use the process of elimination. The 7 types of snake poisons were easy to obtain. Even if they were bought in the capital, it was very likely that they'd gotten them from somewhere else. It wouldn't be easy to track them down, so this lead could be considered useless for now. However, the other 3 types of snake poisons couldn't be obtained so easily. Moreover, quite a few poisons had been used over the past 3 years, so the dosage had to be high as well. Han Yunxi believed that as long as they could find the source of these 3 poisons, they wouldn't be far from the truth. These 3 types of snake poisons were rosemary, bamboo green, and clear lake. They were all miniature snakes that were no more than 3 to 4 cun long, but their toxicity didn't lose out to the poison pythons that Han Yunxi had seen before. Unlike the poison pythons, there were plenty of rosemary, bamboo green, and clear lake snakes, but the key lay in the fact that very few people could catch them and extract their poisons. According to Han Yunxi's estimates, there were no less than 10 families in Cloud Realm continent that possessed such things. Of course, this was only Han Yunxi's estimation. She had no way to investigate, but Gu Beiyue was a veteran in the medical world, so he should have a way. Gu Beiyue really was busy, unlike last time when he could see the emperor as soon as he wanted. The emperor had caught a cold, so he had to stay in the palace and couldn't leave. It wasn't clear when he'd be able to leave, so Han Yunxi could only wait. "Mistress, do you have enough time to make an appointment with eldest Miss Mu in a month?" Little Chen Xiang was very worried. "It's just a cold. It'll take 5 or 6 days at most. The young general needs time to treat himself, too." Han Yunxi said mildly, rejoicing in her heart that Emperor Tianhui wasn't seriously ill. Otherwise, Gu Beiyue wouldn't be able to leave the palace for a month or two. Chen Xiang pouted on one side, unhappy. Mistress, why don't you ask His Highness Duke of Qin for help? Han Yunxi clearly heard her, but pretended not to hear as she rose to leave. Chen Xiang continued to mutter, His Highness Duke of Qin's connections are much wider than Imperial Physician Gu's. Mistress, you're recklessly wasting God's gifts. Hearing this, Han Yunxi had no choice but to stop and turn back with a smile. Be good. Recklessly wasting God's gifts isn't useless. Of course she knew that Long Fei Ye's connections were much wider than Gu Beiyue's, but she didn't believe that guy would be so free as to help her. Mistress, even if you're too embarrassed to ask His Highness Duke of Qin for help, you can have the young general do it. This is a matter of the general's estate, little Chen Xiang reminded again. This time, Han Yunxi narrowed her eyes. How am I embarrassed? Seeing her mistress's dangerous expression, little Chen Xiang shut her mouth and thought, you have a guilty conscience. After gagging little Chen Xiang's mouth, Han Yunxi left in a carefree manner. She was being made difficult by all sorts of people only because she hadn't received Long Fei Ye's true approval. If that guy truly approved of her, she'd sit firmly in her position as the Duke of Qin's official consort. In all of Tianning's court, who would dare to provoke her or offend her? In this era, a mother relied on her son's status, while a wife relied on her husband's honor. But she could only rely on herself, and only herself. Han Yunxi waited for news as she flipped through the Cloud Realm records. This was an ancient book that introduced the various powers of Cloud Realm Continent. In the center of Cloud Realm Continent were Tianning Country, Northern Li Country, and Western Zhou Country. Within these three countries were powers independent of the empire, the most famous of which were Carefree City, the City of Women, and Medical City. The medical academy that Gu Beiyue often mentioned was a large-scale institution in Medical City. It could be said that it was the most authoritative institution in all of Cloud Realm Continent. Unfortunately, the Cloud Realm Records was only an ancient book with very little information on medical families and poison sections. Han Yunxi couldn't find what she wanted inside. Mistress, the Han family is one of the most famous medical families in Tianning Country. It's said that they have quite a few hidden medicines. Little Chen Xiang spoke casually, but her words reminded Han Yunxi of something. That's right, the Han family. In Tianning's capital, or even in all of Tianning Country, there was probably no other family besides the imperial family that had more hidden medicines than the Han family. How could she have left out the Han family? Let's go, we'll go take a look at the Han family. Han Yunxi decided promptly. At noon that day, Han Yunxi brought little Chen Xiang to knock on the Han family's doors. When Han Yunxi transmigrated here, she'd already left the Han family in a bridal sedan chair. All of her memories of the Han family came from the original owner's memories. Yeah, as soon as the door opened, the little page boy guarding the door grumbled, "Who are you? Can't you let me sleep in the middle of the day? Qin Wangfei has arrived." Little Chen Xiang shouted loudly. What has Qin Wangfei come here for? The page boy didn't think much of it, but he quickly recovered his wits and opened the door in fright. He scrambled out and fell to his knees as soon as he saw Han Yunxi. Esteemed Wangfei. This one didn't know esteemed Wangfei would grace us with her presence. Esteemed Wangfei, please spare my life. This page boy was scared out of his wits. Forget about him, no one in the Han family believed that Han Yunxi could step through the Duke of Qin's doors. Moreover, many people had guessed that this eldest young miss would die. The emperor had ordered her to marry, but the Duke of Qin refused. The only way to resolve this conflict was to kill Han Yunxi. But no one expected this eldest young miss to not only enter the Duke of Qin's doors without a hitch, but her temperament had changed greatly. Her medical skills had improved by leaps and bounds, and she'd cured the young general, making a name for herself. Moreover, there were rumors these days that the eldest young miss had even participated in the treatment of the crown prince's strange illness. The old master had been punished, but the eldest young miss was safe and sound. There were all sorts of theories among the people as to why this happened. "Get up," Han Yunxi said coldly. The page boy raised his head to see Han Yunxi's beauty and was very surprised. But when he met Han Yunxi's piercing gaze, he didn't dare to look again. He couldn't help but believe that the rumors were true. He hurriedly got up, but didn't dare to straighten his body. Han Yunxi calmly sat down on the high threshold and asked, "How many wives are there in this residence?" The page boy didn't dare to conceal anything and immediately answered truthfully. Chapter 80. She didn't know if she didn't ask, but she was shocked when she did. Han Kongin had many concubines, but only 2nd Madame Su, 3rd Madame Li, and 7th Madame Helian were left behind. Strictly speaking, Madame Su was also a concubine and could only be called a concubine. However, Madame Su's identity was special. She was the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Appointments. Back then, she admired Han Kongin and married into the Han family. Because Madame Tianqin was the Empress Dowager's lifesaver, even after Madame Tianqin passed away, she didn't dare to be the legal wife. How could the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Appointments be a concubine? Han Kongin called her 2nd Madame, and everyone called her Madame Su. Most of the concubines who had escaped had taken away quite a bit of valuables, and those who remained were all smart people. They did not care about the money, and what they wanted was the Han family's precious medicinal herbs and the Han family medical canon. Hearing the manservant say this, Han Yunxi couldn't help but frown. With only these people left, how could she revive the Han family? There was only one young master in Madame Su's room, a daughter in 3rd concubine's room, and a boy in 7th concubine Helian's room, but he was only 6 years old. If the Han family fell into their hands, wouldn't they fall even faster? Of course, Han Yunxi didn't have the time or energy to care about that at the moment. The general's estate's case was more important. If she lost to Mu Luyue, losing face was a small matter, but taking off her clothes and running away was a big matter. "Don't make a fuss. Bring me to the storeroom," Han Yunxi said in a low voice. When she said this, the manservant was shocked. Could it be that even this married eldest young miss wanted to come back to fight for the things in the storeroom? One had to know that these days, the 3 women who stayed in the residence were fighting to the death for the storeroom key. Of course, the manservant was shocked and didn't dare to make a sound. He quickly led the way. 2nd Madame said that she wanted to reduce expenses and dismissed many servants. The manservant brought Han Yunxi to a remote road and didn't meet many people along the way. However, just as they were about to reach the storeroom, laughter came from the corridor. It seemed that there were many people. Han Yunxi stopped and looked towards the sound. She was blocked by a bamboo bush. "What is it, and what is it?" she asked in a low voice. The Han family was already in such a state, who would still be in the mood to laugh so happily. "Reporting to your highness, that 7th concubine Helian's Cloud Water Pavilion. It's possible that eldest young master and the others are there," the manservant replied. Cloud Water Pavilion's Helian. Han Yunxi had a deep impression of this madam. Among all of Han Kongin's madams, she was the last one to marry into the family. She was also the youngest and, of course, the most favored one. She gave birth to a son for Han Kongin, named Han Yuni. He was the 7th child and was only 6 years old this year. It was this young master that Han Kongin had instructed her to take care of in prison. Han Yunxi didn't have any impression of this young master. When she heard the laughter, she thought that it was the voice of a manservant. She thought that the manservant was probably teasing the young master. What would such a young child know? Han Yunxi was busy today, so she didn't ask much and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, at this time, there was a sudden pa-pa-pa sound mixed with laughter, as if someone was beating someone. Han Yunxi abruptly stopped. What's going on? This little one reckons that seventh young master was beaten again. The manservant said and sighed helplessly, Your Highness, when something happened to old master, the most favored seventh young master was the first to suffer. Everyone suspects that the storeroom key is in seventh concubine's hands. I don't know what seventh concubine is thinking. People have long advised her to leave, but she refused to leave. Her maternal family doesn't even have a master, so how can she fight with second madam and third concubine? When she heard this, Han Yunxi's face sank. Coldly, she said, Take me there. The storeroom key was in her hands. How could Helianshire have the key? Helianshire was born poor, and her maternal family's brother and sister-in-law weren't good people. Once she left the Han family, she probably wouldn't have anywhere to go. The manservant promptly led the way. Very quickly, Han Yunxi followed the long corridor and bypassed the bamboo thicket. From afar, Han Yunxi saw a naked little boy with his hands tied up, squatting in the grass. Behind him, there was a group of adults watching. The leader was the Han family's eldest young master, Han Yuchi, who was using a bamboo board to hit him on the back. A group of adults were abusing a child, yet they were still laughing so loudly. Han Yunxi stared blankly. She couldn't help but remember that when the original owner was young, she was also beaten by this eldest young master. At that time, she was already 10 years old, and the child in front of her was only 6 years old. He was beaten even more miserably than her. Too much. Immediately, a burst of anger rushed into Han Yunxi's heart. She rushed over, her anger overflowing. Han Yuchi, stop. When everyone heard Han Yunxi's voice, they all looked over. Although there were no more poison scars on her face, everyone still recognized her. On the day of the wedding, many people had seen her. Han Yunxi. Han Yuchi blurted out. He was very surprised that Han Yunxi would come. Han Yunxi strode over and saw that the child was shivering from the cold. His thin back was covered with blood-red scars, as if he had been whipped. It was a frightening sight. Chen Xiang, quickly, clothes. Han Yunxi cried out in alarm. Where would little Chen Xiang find clothes? Fortunately, she was quick-witted and immediately had the manservant take off his outer clothes. Han Yunxi took the clothes and was about to go forward to save the child when Han Yuchi signaled with his eyes for the manservants to surround seventh young master Han Yuni. He walked closer with his arms crossed and looked Han Yunxi up and down. Cold laughter, he said, Han Yunxi, I haven't seen you for a few months and you've grown wings. You don't want to stay in the Duke of Qin's fu and dare to come to this young master's territory to meddle in other people's business. Impudent, you've seen Qin Wangfei and still haven't kneeled. Do you want to rebel? Little Chen Xiang reprimanded coldly. Unexpectedly, Han Yuchi suddenly laughed out loud. Qin Wangfei. Did the Duke of Qin marry her? Did the Duke of Qin acknowledge her? Did he kick her sedan door? Shameless woman, you delivered yourself to my door and still have the face to call yourself Qin Wangfei. The surrounding servants were originally afraid of Han Yunxi's identity and the rumors outside. Now that they saw the eldest young master's attitude, they all raised their heads and looked at Han Yunxi with disdain. In the past, hadn't this eldest young miss been bullied by the eldest young master since she was young? Just before she got married, the eldest young master almost tore her gowns apart, but she didn't dare to do anything. After all, the eldest young master was Lady Su's only son and the direct grandson of the Minister of Appointments. His news was much more reliable than the rumors outside. Since the eldest young master had such an attitude, this Qin Wangfei must be nothing more than an empty title. Han Yuqi, you dare to offend your superiors. You should. Little Chen Xiang was furious, but Han Yunqi held her back, her eyes staring coldly at Han Yuqi. Han Yuqi didn't care at first, but when he saw the sharp light in Han Yunqi's eyes, he felt uneasy for no reason. It made him very irritable. How could he be afraid of Han Yunqi? Han Yunqi was only a Wangfei in name. She wasn't favored by Grand Concubine Yi, the Duke of Qin, or the Empress Dowager. Meanwhile, he still had his grandfather to support him. Once the old man was imprisoned, no one in the Han family would have a stronger backer than him. Who was he afraid of? Thinking up to here, Han Yuqi said coldly, Han Yunqi, if you know what's good for you, get out of here for this young master. Otherwise, I'll beat you too. Han Yunqi ignored him, but said coldly, Chen Xiang, go and report to the justice courts. Just say that the Han family's Han Yuqi offended his superiors and spoke wildly to insult this Wangfei. Yes. Little Chen Xiang left immediately. These people are really snobs. When the justice courts come, we'll show them esteemed Wangfei's power. Justice courts. Han Yuqi suddenly laughed out loud. Justice courts, oh. This young master's so scared. What do I do? His sarcastic tone caused everyone to burst into laughter. Soon enough, Han Yuqi grew serious and gave Han Yunqi a disdainful look. He wasn't afraid of the justice courts. He didn't know what crime the previous justice court official, Beigong Hizhe, had committed. However, he heard from the minister's manner that the higher-ups had appointed his maternal grandfather to personally interrogate him. The new justice court official, Official Ouyang, had also been recommended by his maternal grandfather. The justice court official and the minister of the Ministry of Personnel were both third-rank officials. His maternal grandfather was very prestigious. Letting little Chen Xiang leave, Han Yuqi calmly sat down on the side. Coldly looking at Han Yunqi with raised eyebrows, this young master's mood is good today. I'm just waiting for your people to come. Han Yunqi ignored him. Seeing the child's trembling back, she felt pain for him. She was about to go forward, but several manservants stopped her. As for the manservant who brought Han Yunqi here, he didn't dare to make a sound and silently retreated to the side. The situation was deadlocked. Seeing the child curled up into a ball, Han Yunqi became more anxious. Such a small child, if this continued, even if he didn't die from pain, he would die from the cold. After trying a few times, the manservants formed a human wall and didn't budge an inch. Han Yunqi also couldn't push them. She got angry and angrily warned, Han Yuqi, you better not regret it. Regret? Hee, Han Yunqi, the one regretting it will be you. Han Yuqi laughed loudly. He had only heard about the young general's antidote and still didn't believe it. How could he know the specific situation inside? He was very much looking forward to the justice court sending people. Han Yunqi's phoenix eyes narrowed into a straight line. This place wasn't far from the justice court. She would wait. However, just as the two sides were in a deadlock, a sharp cry suddenly sounded, ee-er. Ee-er. Following the sound, a young woman in her early 20s ran over in alarm. This person was none other than the child's mother, the Han family's seventh madam, Helian Zuixiang. As soon as she came over, she didn't care about anyone else. Seeing her son's situation, she immediately burst into tears and crazily rushed over. Stop her! Han Yuqi sternly shouted and suddenly stood up. Helian Zuixiang was only a weak woman. However, a manservant blocked her and fiercely pushed her to the ground. However, she quickly got up and angrily rebuked Han Yuqi. Han Yuqi, are you still human? Whatever you have, you come at me. What kind of man are you to make things difficult for a child? He, come at you. Then fine, obediently hand over the storehouse key. This young master will immediately let you go. Han Yuchi sneered. Hearing this, Han Yunshi understood. I don't have it. How many times have I told you, I don't have the key? How could Lord give the key to us? Something happened to Lord, so the key must still be on Lord. Helian Zuexiang seriously said. You think I'll believe your nonsense? Ever since you entered the family, my father has been sleeping in your room every day and teaching that boy medical skills. You think I don't know? Even if my father didn't give you the storehouse key, you must know where he hid it. Han Yuchi coldly snorted. I don't know. Lord comes every day because Uni is eager to learn. Lord comes every day to personally teach him. Helian Zuexiang hurriedly explained. As she spoke, she took advantage of the manservant's inattention to go to her son. However, in the end, she was still pushed back by the manservant and fell to the ground. This time, Helian Zuexiang somewhat couldn't get up. She cried loudly at her child's frightening back, Son, how are you? You should answer Nyangqin. Son, don't scare Nyangqin. Answer Nyangqin, look at Nyangqin. Son, don't scare mother, okay? Chapter 81. No matter how Helian Zuexiang shouted, the curled-up child didn't respond. Han Yunshi had just concluded that the child had already lost consciousness from the cold, and his small body was probably frozen. If this continued, something big would happen. She was anxious. Little Chen Xiang, when will the reinforcements arrive? Although she couldn't deal with the likes of Princess Chongping and Mu Luiyue with her empty title of Wang Fei, she was still able to alarm the Supreme Court's Chancellor. As for the Minister of Personnel that Han Yuchi relied on, he was similarly intimidated. It was Han Yuchi, this arrogant idiot, who lacked discipline. Not seeing her son's response, Helian Zuexiang was about to go crazy. She crawled to Han Yuchi's feet, crying and begging, Eldest young master, the storehouse key really isn't in our hands. I beg you, let us go. Eldest young master, no matter what, Yuni is still your younger brother. For master's sake, let him go. I beg you. Eldest young master, I'll kowtow to you. Han Yunshi couldn't stand it anymore and was about to stop her, but who knew that Han Yuchi would be so deranged as to kick Helian Zuexiang aside, coldly saying, Do you think we don't have it just because you say so? Someone come, search this young master. What? Hearing this, Helian Zuexiang was so scared that she curled up into a ball. Han Yunshi didn't say another word, coldly pushing aside the manservant in front of her and rushing in front of Helian Zuexiang, opening her arms to protect her. The storehouse key is on this Wang Fei. Whoever has the guts, search this Wang Fei. She coldly said, her phoenix eyes glaring angrily. Her entire body emitted an inviolable domineering aura, causing everyone to be startled. What? The storehouse key was on Han Yunshi's hands. Han Yuchi stared blankly at first, then laughed loudly. Han Yunshi, this joke isn't funny at all. Is that so? Han Yunshi's lips curled into a mocking smile. She actually slowly pulled out a key from her sleeve in front of everyone. This was a bronze key, simple yet exquisite. After being in the hands of several generations of the Han family, it seemed to have spiritual energy, faintly emitting a faint bronze light. Although many people present hadn't seen this key before, eldest young master Han Yuchi had seen this thing in his father's hands more than once. This was the symbol of the Han family head, a treasure that he yearned for even in his dreams. He recognized it at a glance. His eyes, wide open, he was stupefied. Now, isn't it funny? Han Yunshi asked with a cold smile. Actually. You slut, what qualifications do you have to have the storehouse key? Give it to me. After Han Yuqi regained his senses, his greedy expression was like a hungry wolf seeing meat. This time, the surrounding people were also shocked. Why was the storehouse key in Han Yuqi? What was going on? Could it be that Master personally gave it to Han Yuqi? How could that be? Didn't Master hate this daughter of the first wife the most? No one could understand, and Han Yuqi didn't want to understand. Greed shot out from his eyes, and he suddenly pounced over to snatch it. However, Han Yuqi had already expected this. She immediately put the key into her clothes and hid it close to her chest. Seeing this, Han Yuqi stopped in his tracks. You. What? Han Yuqi raised her brows provocatively. Even if Han Yuqi had the guts as big as the sky, he wouldn't dare to touch her. After all, no matter how bad she was still Qin Wangfei. Han Yuqi could spout nonsense and speak rudely, but if he really wanted to search her, Long Fei wouldn't let him off even if his grandfather was the Minister of Appointments or the Emperor himself. This concerned a man's dignity. No matter what, Han Yuqi was still Qin Wangfei. Long Fei Yi could never touch her, but he wouldn't allow any other man to touch her. The thing he yearned for in his dreams was right in front of him, but he couldn't get it. Han Yuqi was so angry that his chest heaved. Han Yuqi, why is the storehouse key in your hands? Did you steal it? He asked coldly. He definitely didn't believe that his father would give her the key. Leaving aside the fact that his father hated her the most, she was a married daughter. Just this fact alone meant that she had no right to inherit the position of head of the Han family. Han Yuqi gave Han Yuqi a cold look, disdaining to reply. She personally helped Helian Zuixiang sit up and murmured, "Don't worry. With me here, nothing will happen." Helian Zuixiang had been badly frightened by Han Yuqi as well. She was still a little dazed, but she quickly recovered and begged, Yuqi. You have to save Yuqi, and I have never made things difficult for you. For your father's sake, save Han Yuqi wasn't very familiar with this seventh madam, but she remembered very clearly that she was the only one in the entire Han family who hadn't made things difficult for her. The child is innocent. Even if you make things difficult for me, I'll still save him, Han Yuqi said seriously. But these words reminded Han Yuqi, who suddenly laughed out loud. Han Yuqi, hand over the storehouse key right now, or else this young master won't let that bastard off. So speaking, he strode towards Han Yuqi. The page boys didn't even have time to get out of the way before they were ruthlessly knocked aside. Slap! This deranged thing actually whipped Han Yuqi again. Heaven knows how ruthless it was this time, it actually split open the old wound. No! Helian Zuixiang cried out. Helian Zuixiang cried out in alarm before fainting in Han Yuqi's arms. Han Yuqi! Han Yuqi couldn't bear it any longer. She set down Helian Zuixiang and stood up, a terrifying murderous aura emanating from her entire body. In a flash, all the page boys surrounded her, as if Han Yuqi could really do something to their master. Han Yuqi felt an indescribable fear in his heart, but it only lasted for a moment. What could a weak woman like Han Yuqi do to him? How about it? Han Yuqi played with the bamboo stick in his hands as he asked provocatively. Han Yuqi took out the storehouse key with one hand and hid a few poison needles in the other. Cold, she said, the storehouse key is right here. Don't make things difficult for a child. Come and get it. As soon as he saw the storehouse key, Han Yuqi's face lit up with joy. He didn't think too much, but tossed the bamboo stick aside and rushed over to snatch it. Han Yuqi backed up a step, but Han Yuqi didn't sense anything amiss. He was about to reach out when Han Yunxi's other hand gripped the poison needles and stabbed them into his wrist. "Ah!" Han Yunxi suddenly shouted, "You dare stab this young master." As he spoke, he raised his hand to strike. Who knew that his right hand would feel like it had been bitten by something? It hurt so much that he couldn't raise it. Han Yunxi, you. Han Yunxi finally realized that he had fallen into a trap. His left hand held his right hand. As the pain intensified, his brows furrowed. "Ant poison. You should have heard of it. Immediately release the child, or else wait for amputation." Han Yunxi cold warned. Ant poison. Those who were poisoned would feel intense pain at first. Soon, they would feel as if their arm was being bitten by thousands of ants. It was incomparably itchy. Not many people could endure it, and no matter how they scratched, it was useless. Unless there was an antidote, the poison would gradually spread from the arm to the entire body. The person wouldn't be poisoned to death, but they would scratch themselves until they were neither human nor ghost, living a life worse than death. If there wasn't an antidote, the best method was to cut off all the poison parts to stop the poison from spreading. However, this poison had a special characteristic. Only those who were bitten by poisonous ants would be poisoned because this poison couldn't be extracted. Although Han Yunxi didn't know poison, he was still from a medical family. He knew about ant poison. Although his hand hurt, he didn't believe in this. "Han Yunxi, do you think you can fool me with such a small trick?" As Han Yunxi spoke, he didn't touch Han Yunxi. With a glance, the manservant at the side picked up a bamboo stick and was about to strike Han Yunxi. However, just as he was about to strike, Han Yunxi suddenly shouted without warning, "Aw, itchy." His left hand, which was originally holding his right wrist, started to scratch unconsciously. This time, everyone was shocked. Could it really be ant poison? Heavens, how could Han Yunxi have this poison? How did she extract it? Once the ant poison acted up, Han Yunxi couldn't care less. He scratched like a madman while shouting, "Itchy, itchy to death. Itchy to death. Quickly come and help me." A few manservants hurried forward to help him scratch the itch on his right hand. At first, it was only his palm and lower limbs that itched, but after a while, the strange itch spread to his arms and upper limbs. "Ah, itchy to death. Here itchy, I can't stand it. I can't stand it." Han Yunxi didn't care about his image. He tore off his sleeve and scratched fiercely. Immediately, a long blood stain appeared on his arm. Seeing this, the manservants didn't dare to do anything. "Scratch. Quick, itchy to death, I can't stand it." Han Yunxi roared. He had already lost his mind. Eldest young master, eldest young miss must have an antidote. At this time, a manservant reminded. Only then did Han Yunxi recover from his madness. He suddenly raised his head to look at Han Yunxi and roared, "Bitch, give me the antidote immediately. Release immediately, or else I'll make you itch all over your body." Han Yunxi said sternly, not yielding an inch. To her, the art of poison wasn't only used to save people, but it could also hurt and kill people. If Han Yunxi thought that he still had a bargaining chip to negotiate with her, then he was too naive. "You, don't even think about it." Han Yunxi wouldn't compromise so easily. When his father wasn't around, he already wanted the storehouse key. Moreover, his father was already in prison. Endure. He endured. Someone, continue beating for this young master. As he ordered, he unconsciously scratched the itch again. As he scratched, he suddenly realized that not only his arm, but his entire shoulder also started to itch. The ant poison spread from slow to fast. At first, it was slow, then it gradually sped up. The scariest thing was that it spread to the face. God knows if Han Yunqi's ant poison was the enhanced version. Han Yuqi just felt the itch on his shoulder, then his neck started to itch. Very quickly, his entire face started to itch. No, no, he roared like a monkey, scratching his neck and face. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. Antidote, Han Yunqi, give me the antidote, and I'll release Han Yuni immediately. How could Han Yunqi give in so easily? She looked at him coldly and said word by word, release him first, or else there's no discussion. Han Yuqi was already tortured to the point that he couldn't take another second. If this continued, he would break his own arms and even his head would be chopped off. It was too itchy, he really couldn't take it. He suddenly turned his head and roared at the manservants, release him, quick, release him. The manservants were quite frightened by the eldest young master's crazed appearance and hurriedly dispersed. Han Yunqi rushed over. Although she was anxious, she was still careful, afraid of hurting Han Yuni. She picked up the clothes on the ground and gently wrapped him from behind, then hugged him in her arms. Chapter 82. Once she held Han Yuni in her arms, Han Yunqi was shocked. Heavens, even if they were separated by a thick coat, she could still feel the coldness of this child's body and his trembling. Only the heavens knew how cold it was in the middle of winter. Han Yunqi thought that this child was already frozen stiff and unconscious, but when she saw his tender little face, she couldn't help but be shocked. This child was actually still awake. His purplish lips were still trembling, but he tightly clenched his teeth. That pair of eyes had distinct black and white, clear and clean like a snowy lake. The tears in his eyes were clearly welling up, but they didn't fall. Han Yunqi saw at a glance that his pale lips were stained with blood. Just how tightly were his teeth clenched? He was only 6 years old, but his childish little face was filled with stubbornness and unyielding. At this age, how many children were still acting spoiled in their parents' arms, but Han Yuni already understood what was called dignity and what was called unyielding. After being mocked and whipped for more than 2 hours, he didn't cry out in pain, didn't cry, and didn't even beg for mercy. At this moment, this tender and stubborn little face seemed to be imprinted in Han Yunqi's heart, making her unable to forget it for the rest of her life. She unconsciously hugged Han Yuni tightly, hoping to give him more warmth. Good job. At the side, Han Yuqi was about to collapse. Han Yunqi, the antidote. Where's the antidote? Han Yunqi then took out a small bag of antidote from her medical bag and threw it over. Han Yuqi hurriedly caught it and wolfed it down. The poison acted up quickly, but the antidote also disappeared quickly. After a while, the itchiness on Han Yuqi's face and neck disappeared. Finally, the itchiness on his arms also disappeared. However, he was already battered and exhausted. Both his sleeves were torn, and his collar was also torn. His arms, neck, and face were all densely covered with scratches. There were several places where his skin had been scratched, and it was a mess of blood. Those who didn't know better would think that he had fought with a mad dog. Han Yuqi, who had calmed down, was panting and staring at Han Yunqi with a fiendish expression. Han Yunqi hugged Han Yuni tightly and looked back coldly without fear. Han Yunqi, you dared to plot against this young master. Do you think this young master will let you off so easily? Han Yuqi approached step by step. You won't. Therefore, what I gave you is not the antidote. Han Yunqi said coldly. Little Chen Xiang had not called for help yet. Now that she finally had a chance to poison her, how could she detoxify the poison so easily? Han Yuqi, this kind of beast, was angered. He could do anything. She wasn't stupid to talk about honesty with him. You! Han Yuqi was furious. Aren't you waiting for the people from the Supreme Court? If you have the guts, then just wait for this princess. Otherwise, I can guarantee that the poison will flare up every hour. Han Yunxi warned. Although she was sitting down, the aura she emitted was enough to shock everyone present. Han Yunxi, who had suffered once, didn't dare to take the risk again. He angrily gritted his teeth, then I'll wait. This young master isn't afraid of you. No matter who came from the Supreme Court, they all knew that he was the grandson of the Minister of Appointments. They all knew that Han Yunxi was only a Qin Wangfei in name and was bullied by both sides. Who would dare to make things difficult for him? He would wait. Today, if Han Yunxi didn't hand over the storehouse key, she wouldn't be able to take a step out of the Han family. Han Yunxi sat down, not caring about his sorry state. He stared at Han Yunxi, afraid that the storehouse key would fly away. Allowing him to stare, Han Yunxi comforted the child in her arms. Even though he was warm, Han Yunxi still clenched his teeth, his nerves all stretched taut. He knew Han Yunxi and could see that Han Yunxi was saving him. However, he didn't dare to relax. He was afraid that if he relaxed, he would cry. He didn't want to cry. In this family, his mother was the most favored and the most patient. Although he was his father's most favored son, ever since he was sensible, because of his mother's forbearance, he had been wronged. He had never cried before. This time, he didn't want to cry. Yuni, it's okay. Don't clench your teeth. Relax, okay? Han Yunxi gently persuaded. She gently stroked Han Yunxi's cheek, her warm hand warming up his cold little face. However, Han Yunxi was still indifferent. Although his clear eyes reflected Han Yunxi's shadow, he didn't look at her again. Even so, Han Yunxi still patiently continued to persuade him. Yuni, be good. Listen to me. You're bleeding. It's okay. Relax, okay? I'm here. I'll protect you. They won't dare to do anything. I'll protect you in the future. Don't be afraid. It's okay. Such patience gradually warmed Han Yunxi's heart. Gradually, Han Yunxi's shadow in his eyes became more and more blurred. Han Yunxi knew that this child couldn't hold on anymore and was gradually willing to give up. Be good. Don't be afraid. I know you're the strongest. She gently stroked his soft hair as if she was caressing her own child. Yuni, I know you're a brave man. You won't cry. You've never cried, right? Yuni, sleep if you're tired. It's okay. I'm here. I'll always be here. Han Yunxi's voice became softer and softer, and Han Yunxi's eyes gradually closed. He finally relaxed and fell asleep. When his eyes were completely closed and his tightly clenched teeth loosened, a line of clear tears finally slid down from the corners of his eyes. Although she didn't really take Han Konggen's words to heart, Han Yunxi's heart ached. She murmured, I didn't lie to you. I promised your father that I'll protect you. Han Yunxi carried Han Yunxi and was about to walk into the room. A few servants immediately wanted to stop her, but a sharp look from her made them retreat. The servants all cast questioning glances at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi disdainfully waved his hand, indicating for the servants to retreat. Han Yunxi couldn't escape. Han Yunxi carried Han Yunxi into the room. Taking advantage of the fact that he was unconscious and couldn't feel the pain, she nimbly treated the wound on his back. She applied the best medicine and carefully bandaged it. After carefully treating it, she tucked Han Yunxi in. At this time, Han Yunxi's excited voice suddenly came from outside the door. Han Yunxi, come out. Come out for this young master. The people from the Supreme Court had come. How could he be so arrogant? Han Yunxi was suspicious and hurriedly went out. She didn't see anyone from the Supreme Court. She only saw little Qin Xiang standing at the door, out of breath. Where are they? Han Yunxi asked. Master. Master. Oh. Little Chen Xiang was panting and couldn't speak clearly. She ran to the Supreme Court and told them about Qin Wangfei's matter. The Supreme Court's minister, official Ouyang, was very respectful and immediately came over in a carriage. The road from the Supreme Court to the Han family was very crowded. Little Chen Xiang disliked the carriage for being too slow and rushed back. She was so tired that she couldn't speak properly. Seeing this, Han Yuqi laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, you must be scared. You couldn't have been kicked out by the Supreme Court's people, right? Who knew that just as he finished speaking, a manservant's panicked report came from outside. Eldest young master, the Supreme Court's minister, official Ouyang, has personally come. He wants to see you. The Supreme Court's minister, official Ouyang, actually came in person. He originally thought that the Supreme Court's minister would send someone over. He didn't expect him to come in person. Although Han Yuqi was a bit surprised, he was even more smug. No matter what, official Ouyang was recommended by grandfather. Of course, he had to give grandfather face. That's good. The Supreme Court's minister personally came to teach Han Yunxi a lesson. Let's see if Han Yunxi, this girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, would dare to put on the airs of a Wangfei and come to the Han family to flaunt her power in the future. He smiled mockingly at Han Yunxi. Forgetting that he was in a sorry state, he strode out of the courtyard to welcome them. At this time, official Ouyang just happened to arrive. His expression was flustered and his footsteps hurried. He and the Minister of Appointments, Su Xiangguang, had been old friends for many years. Naturally, he had heard of his grandson's personality. He was really afraid that if he was a step late and caused Qin Wangfei to be wronged, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. One had to know that although the previous Supreme Court's minister had been punished by the Ministry of Appointments, the real reason was that he had offended Qin Wangfei and angered His Highness Duke of Qin. Although this matter wasn't made public, the Minister of Appointments and he both knew that Qin Wangfei wasn't someone to be trifled with. Seeing official Ouyang come over, Han Yuqi chuckled and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. Official Ouyang, to trouble you to personally come over for such a small matter, really? Before Han Yuqi could finish speaking, official Ouyang passed by him and strode into the courtyard. Had he been ignored? Han Yuqi instantly froze. What did official Ouyang mean? This lowly official greets the Wangfei. Good luck to the Wangfei. This lowly official came late to save you. This lowly official hopes that the Wangfei will forgive this lowly official. When official Ouyang's respectful voice came from behind him, Han Yuqi grew alarmed. He whipped his head around and saw official Ouyang kneeling on one knee in front of Han Yunxi, cupping his hands in greeting with his head bowed. He didn't only look respectful, but even a little timid. This, Han Yuqi couldn't help but pinch his own face. Heavens, this wasn't a dream, right? What happened to official Ouyang? Official Ouyang, Han Yuqi offended his superiors and arrogantly threatened this Wangfei. Tell me, what punishment should he be punished for? Han Yunxi coldly questioned. Of course, she knew the relationship between the Minister of Appointments and this new Supreme Court's minister. However, this new Supreme Court's minister should also know her temper. Should. Official Ouyang hesitated. What? Han Yunxi coldly asked. Offending his superiors, 50 strokes. Threatening the Wangfei, is a death sentence. Official Ouyang honestly replied. Once these words were said, Han Yuqi finally recovered and exclaimed, Official Ouyang, you're really treating this cheap girl as something. What are you afraid of her for? She's just a... Shut up. Official Ouyang angrily roared. However, at the same time, Lady Su's voice sounded. A woman in her 30s hurriedly walked in. She was dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary temperament. I didn't know that the Wang Fei would be here. I didn't go out to greet you. Please forgive me, Wang Fei. Lady Su bowed as soon as she entered. Seeing this, Han Yuqi was stunned again. He remembered that his mother had heard the rumors about Han Yunxi yesterday and had angrily called Han Yunxi a waste. Today, she came back from the minister's manor. How did she become a different person? Lady Su had been busy these days with the matter of prison visits. She had repeatedly gone to the minister's manor to beg her father, but she had been rejected by him. Today, she went again. Her father secretly told her the truth about Heisei of the Northern Court's dismissal. He also said that the reason why the Han family couldn't find a way to visit the prison was because Han Yunxi had ordered that the Han family wasn't allowed to visit the prison. When Lady Su heard this, she knew that the situation wasn't good. She and her son had bullied Han Yunxi many times before. On the way back, she was thinking of how to make up for it. Who knew that the moment she came back, she would hear that something had happened at home. Chapter 83. Establishing authority, heavily punishing the young master. 1. Han Yuqi looked at official Ouyang in disbelief, then looked at his mother, Madame Su. He was puzzled. Were these two possessed? Why were they so polite to Han Yunxi? Mother, he was about to speak when Madame Su leaned forward and scolded, ungrateful thing, your dog eyes can't see empty tie. Why aren't you apologizing to the princess consort? Although the princess consort is your sister, you can't make this kind of joke. She angrily reprimanded while constantly giving Han Yuqi looks. However, Han Yuqi was very stupid and didn't understand at all. He looked suspiciously at his mother and stood motionless. Madame Su was angry and anxious. She suddenly stood up and grabbed her son's ear, angrily scolding, unfilial son, kneel down. Of all kinds of jokes, you made this kind of joke with your sister. Do you know that threatening the princess consort is a capital offense? If you want to court death, no one can stop you. Ah, it hurts, let go, let go. Han Yuqi was in so much pain that he had no choice but to bend down. At this time, Madame Su took the opportunity to whisper in his ear, stinky brat, you think I'm willing to follow her? The rumors are true. Han Yunxi really saved the crown prince, your grandfather said it himself. What, the rumors were true? Han Yunxi really saved the crown prince, so she was now a great hero. Han Yuqi only felt that his head had been hit by something, shaking him so much that he couldn't recover for a moment. His legs went soft and he directly knelt down. Princess consort, this stinky brat has been shooting his mouth off since he was young. You also know that, after all, he's still young. Please forgive him this time. It's all my fault, I didn't teach my son well. I'll apologize to you. Madame Su was very sincere, but her eyes hid her dissatisfaction. It had to be known that she had always been arrogant and bossy towards Han Yunxi, ordering her around. At this time, official Ouyang on the side quickly pleaded for leniency, princess consort, eldest young master, this. Eldest young master is indeed outrageous, but this is still a matter of the Han family. If this matter is brought to the Supreme Court, you will lose face and become a joke to the outer sect. Han Yunxi sneered in her heart. Of course, she knew about the relationship between official Ouyang and the Minister of Personnel Affairs. Official Ouyang's words were really decent. She ignored Lady Su and official Ouyang, looking down at Han Yuqi from high above. She asked half-jokingly, eldest young master, who is this lowly girl scolding? Madame Su and General Ouyang were frightened by these words. Han Yuqi was even more frightened. He felt his legs go soft and couldn't kneel. This commoner will apologize to you. This commoner was wrong. Wrong. Han Yuqi was so frightened that his words were incoherent. If Han Yunshi became the hero who saved the crown prince, then she would no longer be a princess consort in name. At least, the imperial family recognized her. Like this, with the status of a commoner in the Han family, if they disrespected her, it would be a serious crime. Thinking of his previous actions, Han Yuqi's intestines turned green with regret. He suddenly gave himself a slap. Esteemed princess consort, this commoner's mouth is cheap. This commoner will punish himself. Seeing this, Madame Su was shocked and covered her mouth in disbelief. Her precious son. Unfortunately, Han Yunshi coldly looked at him. She didn't move and didn't react. Han Yuqi could only force himself to slap himself again. Of course, his movements weren't big. He was afraid of pain. However, after the second slap, Han Yunshi was still indifferent, looking at him with an expressionless face. What to do? Should he continue to slap himself? No, he was afraid of pain. Han Yuqi was helpless and could only look at his mother for help. Madame Su saw those two slaps and her heart ached. She wanted to explode, but she didn't dare. She hurriedly bowed and persuaded, esteemed princess consort, he's still your blood-related younger brother. He didn't do it on purpose and didn't really disrespect you. Teach him a lesson and he won't dare to do it again. At this time, Han Yunshi finally opened her mouth, afraid of pain. Yes, his face is swollen. This lesson is enough for him to remember for a lifetime. Madame Su hurriedly said. Is that so? Han Yunshi leaned over and calmly lifted Han Yuqi's chin. Han Yuqi was incomparably nervous and didn't dare to move. Han Yunshi seriously lifted his face and looked left and right. It was all white and clean, even more delicate than a woman's. There wasn't a single scar. If this was considered painful, then what were the wounds on her arms from the whip when she was young? Then what about the bloody scars on Han Yunxi's back? Han Yunshi's eyes flashed with anger as she said coldly, whether or not his face is swollen isn't up to you to say. So speaking, she viciously shook off Han Yuqi's chin and said coldly, little Chen Xiang, beat him for this Wang Fei. No. Madame Su exclaimed. Her tone suddenly turned fierce. Yunshi, he's your blood-related younger brother. You two were born of the same father. You can't be so heartless. Han Yunshi laughed coldly. The one lying in the room is also his blood-related younger brother, born of the same father. How can he be so heartless? Of course Madame Su knew what her own son had done. For a moment, she was at a loss for words. Yunshi, this stinking brat doesn't know any better. Could it be that you're also following? Before she could finish, Han Yunshi laughed coldly. What, is second madam blaming Yunshi for not knowing any better? Second madam. Madame Su gave a start. For a moment, she didn't realize that Han Yunshi was referring to her. Yes, she wasn't the official wife, but Han Kongin had married her in accordance with the rights of an official wife. Since the first day she entered the house, everyone had called her Madame Su. Today was the first time she'd heard the words second madam. These words represented a concubine. Han Yunshi was humiliating her. Madame Su's hands clenched into claws inside her sleeves. What a Han Yunshi! She'd already coaxed her with kind words, but what else did she want? If Han Yunshi didn't have Yuqi's weakness in her hands, she wouldn't have spoken so humbly. Madame Su took a deep breath, doing her best to ignore Han Yunshi's words. She did her best to calm herself down. A wise man didn't fight when the odds were against him, so she endured. No, how could I mean that? Yunshi, you're the eldest sister. You've been more sensible since you were young. Han Yunshi smiled coldly. Second madam's meaning is that you're still blaming me for not being sensible? Madame Su was once again at a loss for words. She didn't know what to say, but nudged official Ouyang beside her with her elbow. Esteemed Wang Fei, official Ouyang was about to coax her when Han Yunxi raised a hand to stop him. Official Ouyang, just then you said that offending one's superiors would result in 50 beatings. You weren't lying to this Wang Fei, were you? Official Ouyang gave a start. Seeing Han Yunxi so serious, he was afraid to take the blame and quickly shook his head. I don't dare, I don't dare. It really is 50 beatings. Just then, Han Yunxi cursed this Wang Fei as a lowly girl. That counts as offending one's superiors, right? Han Yunxi asked again. Official Ouyang could only nod. It counts. Since it counts, then shouldn't he be flogged 100 times for offending one's superiors twice? Han Yunxi suddenly said sternly. As soon as these words came out, Han Yunxi's entire body was paralyzed. His body was weak and his mind was blank. Madame Su was so scared that her face turned white. She coldly looked at official Ouyang, her eyes full of warning. But so what if she gave a warning? Official Ouyang didn't dare to offend Han Yunxi. He could only avoid her gaze. Official Ouyang, take him out for me. Carry out the punishment. Han Yunxi didn't give them a chance to catch their breath. 100 beatings with a cane could kill someone. Compared to beatings with a cane, what was a slap? They only had two paths. Either they were beaten or they were flogged 100 times. Beat. Madame Su didn't have a choice. She suddenly stood up and anxiously said, Esteemed Wang Fei, this stinky brat deserves to be beaten. Deserves to be beaten. Taking advantage of the fact that Han Yunxi hadn't insisted on flogging, she quickly stepped forward and grabbed little Chen Xiang's hand. Miss, you beat. Beat. Little Chen Xiang loathed this pair of mother and son. She fiercely shook off her hand and calmly said, Miss, my hand is small, while eldest young master's skin is thick. Perhaps my hand will swell before eldest young master's face does. Han Yunxi secretly laughed. So this little Chen Xiang had a poisonous tongue as well. Hearing that little Chen Xiang wasn't going to beat him, Han Yunxi seemed to be scared witless. He sat paralyzed on the ground without moving. The darkness in Madame Su's eyes couldn't be dispelled. A trace of calculation flashed past her eyes before they turned red and she started crying. Yunxi, just let your little brother go. I'm begging you, beg. Pretending to be pitiful. A cold smile rose to Han Yunxi's lips as she looked towards 7th Madame, Helian Zuixiang, who was still unconscious on the side. If begging worked, then this pitiful mother wouldn't be threatened with a body search. If begging was useful, she wouldn't have suffered so much growing up. Han Yunxi fiercely shook off Madame Su's hand, showing no mercy. Official Ouyang, take him away from me. No. Don't. Madame Su shouted, blocking official Ouyang. I'll hit him. I'll hit him myself. Yunxi, I'll teach him a lesson myself. As she spoke, she was afraid that Han Yunxi wouldn't give her another chance. Without hesitation, she ruthlessly slapped Han Yunxi across the face. Paw! What a resounding slap. This time, Han Yunxi woke up. He subconsciously covered his face and was about to dodge when Madame Su said coldly, Someone come, detain him for me. The surrounding servants were all stunned. Hearing Madame Su shout, two of them stepped forward to detain Han Yunxi. Mother, as soon as Han Yunxi spoke, Madame Su slapped him again. Paw! This clear and bright sound made the surrounding manservants tremble in fear. Official Ouyang didn't dare to look and turned his head away. These two slaps left red palm marks on Han Yunxi's cheeks, making them slightly swollen. Madame Su's hand hurt, but her heart hurt even more. She treasured this son so much. Forget about herself, she wouldn't even allow Han Kongan to hit her son. But today, she was going to do it herself. Madame Su's hand trembled as her heart shattered. Han Yuqi only felt his cheeks burning. It hurt so much that he didn't even dare to touch them. This should be enough, right? Esteemed Wang Fei, it's swollen, completely swollen, Madame Su said in a choked voice. She wanted nothing more than to rush over and slap Han Yunxi. It really was a bit swollen, but compared to the injuries on Er's back, it paled in comparison. 2 slaps were worth 100 beatings. Wasn't Madame Su too good at calculating accounts? Han Yunxi glanced at her and said coldly, "This Wang Fei said just then, whether it's swollen or not isn't up to you to decide." What? Han Yuqi was about to cry at these words. Madame Su had long cried, but she didn't dare to argue. She could only grit her teeth and continue. 1 slap from the left, 1 from the right, 1 after another. Paw! 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 The sounds rose and fell one after another, fierce and intense. Madame Su's hand hurt, and Han Yuqi's face hurt. The mother and son cried together, but Han Yunxi still didn't call for them to stop. In the end, all the surrounding servants didn't dare to watch, their hearts filled with fear. This eldest young miss, no, to be exact, Qin Wang Fei was really not to be trifled with. They had all misjudged her. Chapter 84. Helian Zuixiang, who had fainted on the side, had also woken up at some point. She was dumbstruck as she watched Lady Su hit her son. Only when she saw official Ouyang did she understand. Finally, Lady Su's hand lost strength and Han Yuqi's face was swollen like a pig's. Lady Su fell to her knees. "Esteemed Wang Fei, look, it's swollen. It's really swollen. Raise your head and look," Han Yunxi said coldly. No matter how much pain Han Yuqi was in, it still hurt. He quickly raised his head and saw the big red pig's head. Han Yunxi almost laughed out loud, but of course, she held it in. It can be considered swollen," she said mildly. Hearing this, Lady Su and Han Yuqi both fell back into their seats, finally letting out a sigh of relief. But who knew that Han Yunxi would continue? "The crime of offending one's superior can be forgiven, but the crime of threatening this Wang Fei..." She didn't finish her sentence and looked at official Ouyang. What? He was already beaten to this state and she still wanted to continue questioning him. And she was asking about the crime of threatening. Official Ouyang didn't expect this and his heart skipped a beat. He didn't think this woman would be so difficult to deal with. Lady Su and Han Yuqi were both stunned and didn't recover. How could this be? What did Han Yunxi want to do? For a moment, the entire courtyard was silent. All the servants were so scared that they held their breaths, not daring to make a sound. Everyone had just heard official Ouyang say that threatening Qin Wang Fei was a capital offense. Official Ouyang, eldest young Master Han, brought so many page boys to threaten this Wang Fei and even tried to steal my things. He's already posed a threat to the safety of this Wang Fei's ginseng. According to the law, how should this be judged? Han Yunxi asked seriously. When these words came out, the surrounding servants all fell to their knees. It's over, it's over. They were also going to suffer a calamity. And at this time, the courtyard was already surrounded by people who had heard the news and rushed over. Almost all the servants had come, and third Madame Li and her daughter Han Ruoxue were hiding among them. Madame Li was around 30 years old. She maintained herself very well and did not lose out to a young woman's beauty. She even had more charm than a young woman. Her daughter, Han Ruoxue, looked very similar to her. Her pair of big, watery eyes were especially moving. They didn't say much and just watched silently. Compared to Madame Su and her son, Madame Li and her daughter were much calmer. In the silent courtyard, official Ouyang was in a difficult position. Esteemed Wang Fei, this, before he could finish, Lady Su suddenly cried out and burst into tears. Yunqi, aw. Do you really have to be so heartless? Yunqi. Yuqi is the Han family's eldest son, aw. He's their heir and hope. Your father is already like that. Don't tell me you still want to destroy the last hope of the Han family. I beg you, spare him this time. Madame Su could only pretend to be pitiful. She kept wiping her tears, no longer caring about her image. Han Yuqi started crying as well, imploring, "Big sis, I'll do anything you want. Just spare me this time, I won't dare next time." It had to be said that this scene caused Madame Su and her son standing in the hearts of the Han family to plummet. Han Yunqi had undoubtedly established her prestige. Even Madame Su and her son were begging her like this. In the future, who in the Han family would dare to look down on her and not fear her? Han Yunqi smiled coldly in her heart. She was just waiting for Han Yuqi to say those words. She was only trying to scare mother and son, so why would she really bring the matter to the justice courts and sentence Han Yuqi to death for his crimes? If she really did, wouldn't she become a heartless and ruthless woman in everyone's eyes who didn't care about brotherly affection? Moreover, Han Kongin was already crippled. The Han family needed someone to support it. She was just a married daughter. No matter how much power she had, she was still an outsider. Madame Su's backing was the strongest. With her here, at least the relatives wouldn't covet the Han family's property. Seventh Madame's branch was still too weak. For the time being, they weren't able to support the Han family with its internal and external troubles. Han Yunqi scrutinized Han Yuqi. After a long time, she said coldly, "Fine. For father's sake, the death penalty can be avoided, but the punishment can't be avoided." Hearing this, Madame Su and her son felt as if they had been pardoned. Madame Su's heart, which had been hanging high in the air, finally calmed down. As for Han Yuqi, this outwardly strong but inwardly weak thing, he almost fainted from fright. Fortunately, his mother caught him in time and stealthily pinched his waist, waking him up. It was already embarrassing enough. If he fainted from fright at this time, how could he raise his head in the Han family in the future? Many thanks for esteemed Wang Fei's mercy, many thanks for esteemed Wang Fei's mercy. Madame Su expressed her thanks again and again, but when she lowered her head, a trace of hatred flashed past her eyes. She was such a pampered, proud, and arrogant person. She was the mistress of this household, but for the sake of her son's life, she had no choice but to lower her voice and beg Han Yunqi in public. How could she not hate her? This wild girl with no mother to raise her, did she really think she was a phoenix just because she'd flown up to a branch? Don't think that the Empress Dowager and Empress would let her go just because she saved the Crown Prince's life. Don't think that Grand Concubine Yi would acknowledge her just because she entered the Duke of Qin's gates. Don't think that just because she was Qin Wangfei, she had the right to come back and manage the Han family's affairs. This time, she and Yuqi had endured and suffered a loss. As long as she didn't have any evidence to use against them, what could she do to them? If they couldn't escape punishment, then so be it. As long as they didn't die, they would only suffer some physical pain. What could Han Yunqi do to Yuqi? The Han family's affairs were still up to her, the wife, and the eldest son, Yuqi, to decide. If Han Yunqi wanted to take a single cent from the Han family, she could forget about it. If she wanted to protect 7th Madame's branch, there was no way. Unable to answer, official Ouyang finally had a way out. He quickly flattered, "Esteemed Wang Fei's magnanimity is the Han family's fortune." Han Yunqi smiled. "Then what does official Ouyang think the punishment should be?" This, Lady Su and Han Yuqi both looked over. Official Ouyang was a man who wouldn't die if he didn't seek death. He dearly wanted to say that since his face was swollen from the slaps, he should be lenient with his punishment. But seeing Han Yunqi's fake smile, he didn't dare to say anything. He could only laugh awkwardly. Of course I'll listen to esteemed Wang Fei. At these words, Lady Su and her son's gazes were filled with resentment. Little Chen Xiang, what do you think? Han Yunqi asked lazily. Mistress, the death penalty can be avoided, but the punishment should be 100 beatings. Little Chen Xiang answered casually, as if she was talking about the weather. At these words, Han Yuqi's eyes widened. Lady Su held back her anger. Cold, she said, this little girl really knows how to joke. How is it a joke? I think it's a good idea. Han Yunqi said casually, as if she was also talking about the weather. At this moment, everyone's faces were completely pale. Even Lady Su's face was completely dark. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Official Ouyang couldn't hold it in anymore. He hurriedly advised, esteemed Wang Fei, 100 beatings will kill someone. They've already been beaten. In this official's opinion, this punishment should be lighter. Of course, Han Yunqi knew that 100 beatings would kill someone. She was just scaring Lady Su. After all, it wasn't easy to see the face of the eldest daughter of the Minister of Personnel's family turn pale. She grew up being bullied and oppressed. Scolded every 3 days, beaten every 5 days, and whipped several times with bamboo whips until her arms were covered in skin. All of this was mostly due to Lady Su. How could she not know Lady Su's temper? This woman, no matter if she was gently persuading or crying and begging, her heart was vicious. It was like a viper was hiding, waiting for an opportunity to bite back. And the only one who could restrain her was undoubtedly her precious son. Han Yunqi glanced at Lady Su with a pensive expression. Lenient punishment, eh? Well. Seeing this, everyone became nervous. Lady Su hurriedly gave Official Ouyang a look. Official Ouyang hesitated for a moment, then cautiously advised, esteemed Wang Fei, why don't we follow the Han family's rules? The Han family's rules were quite strict, but no matter which one it was lighter than 100 beatings. Han Yunqi had been served by the family's rules since she was young. There were more than 100 rules, and she knew them all. It seemed like Official Ouyang and Lady Su still had hope. Soon, she made them despair. Coldly, she said, this Wang Fei is now punishing him for the crime of threatening. Official Ouyang, are you mistaken? Official Ouyang's heart jumped, then he suddenly understood. It seemed that Han Yuqi couldn't escape this calamity. Lady Su didn't give up and still wanted to persuade, but Han Yunqi said coldly, 50 beatings. Whoever else pleads for mercy for him, beat them together. When these words came out, the crowd was silent. Lady Su looked at Han Yunqi in disbelief. She didn't think that this lowly girl would dare to be serious. 50 beatings. Even if he wasn't crippled, he wouldn't be able to get out of bed for a month or 2. At this critical juncture of fighting for the family head position, as the eldest young master, Han Yuqi couldn't even get out of bed. How could he compete with 3rd Enyang and 7th Enyang? Wasn't this deliberately making the eldest young master fall out early? Lady Su tightly clenched her fists. She was about to explode, but who knew that Han Yuqi couldn't hold back first? He suddenly rushed in front of Han Yunqi. Han Yunqi, don't be so shameless. This young master has had enough. This young master is telling you, today, if you dare to. Before he could finish, Official Ouyang quickly went forward to pull him back. Eldest young master, don't be rude. Han Yuqi suddenly broke free and wanted to continue scolding. Official Ouyang quickly went over and reminded in a low voice, Lady Su, you can't. If this continues, things will get out of hand. You have to know, eldest young master offended the Wangfei first. Regardless of the Wangfei's position in the Wangfu. She is still the face of the Duke of Qin's household. If things get out of hand, even Minister Shangshu might not. Official Ouyang didn't continue, but Lady Su understood this. She was very unwilling, but she had no choice but to pull her son back. Yuqi, have you been beaten senseless? Why don't you? Han Yuqi was used to bullying others. Today, he was bullied so miserably. How could he calm down? He angrily said to Lady Su, Mother, what are you afraid of her for? Didn't you say that even if she's the Wangfei, she can't do whatever she wants to us? We still have grandfather's support. Grandfather isn't someone to be trifled with. Of course, Lady Su had said this before. She had even said something even more outrageous. However, she couldn't say it in front of Han Yunxi. She had no choice but to pinch Han Yuqi's arm to make him shut up. Enough. If you continue to speak nonsense and go crazy, you can get out of the Han family. Lady Su could only warn him like this. Han Yuqi was still most afraid of this mother. Hearing this, he could only bitterly remain silent. Chapter 85. Han Yunxi listened to Han Yuqi's words from the side, but wasn't surprised. Lady Su had said the same thing to the bridal sedan chair on the day of her wedding. Moreover, her words were even uglier and more arrogant. She'd said that she, Han Yunxi, wouldn't be a phoenix even if she flew to a branch. A lowly girl would always be a lowly girl. She'd said that she, Han Yunxi, was marrying the Duke of Qin like a toad wanting to eat emu meat. If it was anyone else, they'd have slammed their heads against the wall and died long ago. Only her skin was 3 feet thick enough to get on the bridal sedan chair. Although it was Grand Concubine Yi who told the wedding nanny to go the wrong way that day, Lady Su had her own ways as well. Whether it was her wedding dress, makeup, or jewelry, everything had been tampered with. She'd even docked her dowry and made her bring a chest full of her little sister's old clothes. Han Yunxi knew all of this. Today, she was avenging little Yi, and herself. Seeing Han Yuqi stop moving, Han Yunxi ordered cold, someone come, dragged the eldest young master out and beat him viciously. Although she'd only brought little Chen Xiang with her, none of the Han family's page boys dared to slight her. They quickly went to prepare and drag Han Yuqi out. Let me go, let me go. Qin Wangfei, I'm begging you, spare me. Spare me. I won't dare again, I won't dare again. No matter how Han Yuqi begged, Han Yunxi remained indifferent. Since she'd made a big fuss today, she might as well make a bigger one. Everyone in the Han family would see clearly that a married daughter like her wasn't to be trifled with. As soon as Han Yuqi was taken out, the people outside all parted to form a path, surrounding the left and right sides. How could Han Yuqi rest peacefully on the bench? He wanted to get off immediately, but Han Yunxi said coldly, tie him to the bench for me. Be taught. Yes, yes. The page boy's teeth were chattering, but he had no choice but to obey. Madame Su chased after them. She had to lean on the wall to steady herself. She didn't even dare to look at her son. She glared at Han Yunxi with hatred in her eyes. She couldn't wait for this woman to die. Han Yunxi, you better not fall into this madame's hands one day. Otherwise, this madam will definitely tear you to pieces. Very quickly, Han Yuqi was tied tightly to the stool. 2 manservants, one on the left and one on the right, held large boards. 50 times, not one less. Beat him. Han Yunxi ordered coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, paw. A plank was struck down. Just by hearing the sound, one could tell that he didn't use much strength. Stop. Han Yunshi coldly looked at the manservant. What, are you hungry? Why don't I let you eat a few paddles as well? The manservant was frightened. Without waiting for Han Yunshi to say anything, he immediately slapped Han Yuchi's butt with the board. Paw! It was a resounding slap. At the same time, Han Yuchi also cried out. Learning from the previous example, the other manservant didn't dare to be negligent. He immediately followed up with a plank. Ah! Han Yuchi's cries were incomparably miserable. 50 paddles, one after another. Every hit was very heavy. Seeing this, everyone's hearts also pounded heavily. Madame Su covered her mouth and supported herself against the wall. She didn't dare to look. In the quiet courtyard, other than the sound of the paddles, there was only Han Yuchi's miserable cries. It really was like a pig being slaughtered. Finally, the 50 paddles were all finished. The two manservants' hands were numb. Han Yuchi's butt was simply a bloody mess. It was a shocking sight. He had already fainted. Madame Su rushed over. Seeing this, she was so distressed that she almost fainted. She hurriedly shouted, "Doctor, someone come, call a doctor." How could she still care about the storeroom key in Han Yunshi's hand? She ordered people to send the eldest young master back to his room while she urged the doctor. Her entire person seemed to have gone crazy. Seeing this, all the servants were dumbfounded. They had never seen Madame Su so out of her wits. After Madame Su and the eldest young master left, Han Yunshi looked at the surrounding crowd. With this look, everyone immediately lowered their heads and consciously retreated. Third Yin Yang and second Miss were hiding behind a big tree. They didn't show themselves nor did they leave. Third Yin Yang and her daughter heard that Han Yunshi had the storeroom key in her hand and rushed over. Who knew that they would run into the scene of Han Yunshi severely punishing the eldest young master? Madame Su relied on her maternal family's power to act tyrannically for so many years. Someone should have come out long ago to teach her a lesson. However, they never thought that it would be Han Yunshi who would come out. One had to know that even though Han Yunshi was a legitimate eldest miss, she had always been timid and afraid of getting into trouble. She was a person who tolerated and retreated silently. Moreover, even if she became Qin Wangfei, she would only be a decoration. Second Miss Han Ruoshua looked at Han Yunshi's face from afar and a trace of jealousy flashed through her eyes. She said in a low voice, "Mother, her face has really recovered." Han Ruoshua was the Han family's most beautiful daughter. However, now that the poisonous scar on Han Yunshi's face was gone, her face directly surpassed Han Ruoshua's. On the day of the wedding, many people in the Han family had seen Han Yunshi's beauty and the servants had been talking about it for a long time. Han Ruoshua had never seen it, so she didn't believe it. However, now that she saw the real person, even she had to admit it. The rumors outside say that she knows how to detoxify and save the young general. In my opinion, it might be true. Madame Li said faintly with a shadow in her eyes. If it wasn't true, why would the Supreme Court's official Ouyang be so afraid of her? What right did she have to arrogantly return to her maternal family with the identity of a Wangfei? When these words came out, Han Ruoshua's expression also became complicated. However, she quickly recovered and smiled. "Mother, do you think she came back to fight for the storeroom?" Madame Li snorted. "She's a married daughter. Even if she becomes the empress, she still doesn't have the right." Although Madame Li gave birth to a daughter, she spent a lot of effort to raise her. When it came to medical skills, she was considered the best in the Han family's generation. She had always been looking for a good candidate for her daughter to marry into the family. This way, Han Ruoshua would have the right to inherit the position of head of the household. Then why is the storeroom key in her hands? I'm sure she stole it from father's hands. She has this thought. Han Ruoshue said hatefully. Madame Li's eyes flashed with a complicated light. She looked at Han Yunxi for a long time before saying, Shui, you haven't visited Miss Mu in a long time, right? Han Ruoshue nodded. Although Han Ruoshue and Mu Liuyue's relationship wasn't as close as Mu Liuyue and Princess Changping's, they could still be considered good sisters. Han Ruoshue would always give Mu Liuyue some rare trinkets, making Mu Liuyue very happy every time. Of course, this was all taught to her by Madame Li. Madame Li said that getting close to Mu Liuyue was the same as getting close to Princess Changping. With Princess Changping as her backing, she was much stronger than Madame Su, the Minister of Personnel. Ever since Han Yunxi married into the Duke of Qin's household, Han Ruoshue didn't dare to look for Mu Liuyue. She was afraid that if Mu Liuyue got angry, she'd be implicated. After all, she was Han Yunxi's younger sister. Regarding the matter of the general's household and the crown prince's strange illness, I think you should go check on Mu Liuyue, Madame Li said lightly. I'll do my best, Han Ruoshue replied seriously. Seeing that her mother was about to leave, she hurriedly stopped her. Mother, are we just going to let her go like this? Even if father gave her the key, it's still unreasonable. After all, she's married off. Let's go get it back. Madame Li stopped, her cold gaze slowly moving from Han Ruoshue's hand to Han Ruoshue's face. Seeing this, Han Ruoshue resentfully let go, knowing that her mother was angry. Madame Su isn't worried, so why are you? Even if someone wants to take revenge, it shouldn't be us. Madame Li's tone was cold and strict. Ever since she was young, her mother had always been this cold. Han Ruoshue was already used to it. She lowered her head. Yes, daughter understands. Madame Su's backing was strong, and this time, Han Yunxi beat up Han Yuqi for Han Yuni. With Madame Su's personality, how could she let the seventh branch off so easily? How could she not go against Han Yunxi? If 7th Madame Helian Zuixiang was said to be patient, then Madame Li was the most low-key person. She was always sober and leisurely as a bystander, waiting for the fishermen to reap the benefits. Madame Li and her daughter left silently. Han Yunxi had already helped 7th Madame into the room. Was still unconscious. Han Yunxi touched his forehead to make sure that he didn't have a fever because of the wound infection. Only then did she relax. Qin Wangfei, today, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known. 7th Madame looked at her son lying quietly on the bed, then looked at Han Yunxi. She was choked with sobs and couldn't speak. Han Yunxi looked at 7th Madame and felt helpless. How could such a weak and patient mother protect her? She was afraid that this child would be the one to protect his mother. This time, she showed the storehouse key and taught Han Yuqi a lesson. Madame Su wouldn't dare to touch the mother and daughter, at least for a short period of time. However, that was only temporary and not a long-term plan. The Han family's new head must be supported as soon as possible. Even if was young, with the status of head of the family, those people wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. Unfortunately, she had a bet with Mu Liuyue first and didn't have time to fight a battle of wits and courage with these people. If it was Han Konggen's idea, Han Konggen was already locked up. Madame Su and Madame Li probably wouldn't agree. Han Yunxi indicated that 7th Madame didn't need to say more and sat down first. She pondered for a moment and said, Little Chen Xiang, stay here and take care of Master Gu. Yes, mistress, don't worry. With this servant here, I definitely won't let anyone bully 7th young master. Little Chen Xiang immediately accepted the order. This girl was getting smarter. Hearing this, 7th Madame was overjoyed and hurriedly got up to kneel in thanks. Many thanks, Princess Consort. Is able to receive Princess Consort's care. It's his good fortune from 3 lifetimes. Han Yunshi personally supported her and earnestly said, "Seventh madam, take good care of her. Sometimes, when it's time to be tough, you have to be tough." That Madam Su isn't the official wife. Although Han Yuchi is the eldest young master, he's also a concubine's son like her. There's nothing to be afraid of. In the future, little Chen Xiang will live here. If there's anything, just tell her, understand? Seventh Madam was so moved that she didn't know what to say. She nodded repeatedly, her tears almost falling down in bunches. Han Yunshi gave little Chen Xiang a few more instructions before leaving. Seeing that the sky was almost dark, she still hadn't finished today's business. The manservant who had been guarding the door was still waiting outside the courtyard, not daring to leave. Seeing Han Yunshi come out, he hurriedly came forward to flatter her. "Princess Consort, this humble one has been waiting for you." This manservant could be considered quick-witted. Han Yunshi nodded. "Lead the way." This time, she had indeed come for the storehouse. However, she didn't want to obtain the things in the storehouse. Instead, she wanted to check if the storehouse had the 3 snake poisons she was looking for. Under the manservant's guidance, Han Yunshi quickly arrived at the Han family storehouse. Chapter 86. The Han family storehouse was located behind the Thousand Herb Garden where Han Kongan lived. It was a secret underground storehouse and the entrance was guarded by specialized storehouse guards. These guards were not manservants but all of them knew martial arts. Even if Han Kongan was imprisoned, they would still guard this place and wait for the next family head to appear. The storehouse was a forbidden area and no one was allowed to casually approach it. The manservant stopped from afar and said, "Princess Consort, please go ahead. This lowly one will wait for you here." Han Yunshi walked over and a guard immediately came forward to stop her. "Who are you? How dare you approach the storehouse without permission?" "Daughter Han Yunshi replied coldly. The guard took a closer look and finally recognized Han Yunshi. However, he still did not give her any face. "Since you are the eldest miss, you should know the rules of the Han family." Han Yunshi calmly took out the storehouse key. Seeing the storehouse key is equivalent to seeing the family head. You should be clear about this. Seeing this, the guard was shocked and several other guards also came over. They recognized that it was indeed the storehouse key. Indeed, seeing the storehouse key was equivalent to seeing the family head. As servants, they had no right to question Han Yunshi about how she got the key. They could only respectfully let her in. Han Yunshi walked over confidently. Since she was young, she had heard that the Han family storehouse was very big. However, she only knew how big it was when she personally walked in. Using the key to open the storehouse door, she found that it was divided into 2 storehouses. On the left was the money storehouse. It stored gold ingots and silver ingots. It was the Han family's reserve money and would never be used unless it was absolutely necessary. On the right was the medicine storehouse. Han Yunshi had just reached the door when the strong smell of medicinal herbs hit her face. This familiar smell made her feel much better. This medicine storehouse was like a small library. Towering medicine shelves stood in great numbers. On the side of each shelf, there was a classification of medicinal herbs. The names of the herbs were written in front of the drawers on the shelves. The classification was clear and detailed, making it easy to find. Soon, Han Yunshi found the category of poisons. The Han family was not a poison sect, but a medical family. The poisons here were not real poisons, but poisonous herbs that could be used as medicine. Han Yunshi didn't know if she didn't look for it, but when she did, she was shocked. The Han family's hidden medicine was much better than what Han Yunshi had imagined. Unfortunately, she searched every drawer in the poisons category, and even all the secret chambers, but she only found the 7 common snake poisons. She didn't find the other 3 poisons she was looking for. From the looks of it, the 3 snake venoms did not come from the Han family. This lead was broken again. Han Yunxi closed the last drawer and exhaled lightly. At this moment, she caught sight of a study table on the side. On top of the table was a book that was halfway through its pages. Han Yunxi walked over and flipped to the cover. She saw the Han family medical canon written in large letters. So this was where it was. After hesitating for a bit, Han Yunxi put the Han family medical canon into her sleeve. Her lips curled into a sly smile as she said to herself, "It's too early to give it to I'll keep it for now." On the way out of the storehouse, Han Yunxi kept her head down as she pondered. The Han family could be eliminated as a suspect. Now she could only see if Mu Qinggu had found any clues. She really hoped to see Gu Beiyue as soon as possible. With his connections, she wouldn't have to work so hard. Not long after leaving the storehouse, the manservant guarding the door caught up to her. "Princess Consort, are you going back to the palace? This little one will send you out." Han Yunxi looked at him and softly said, "What is your name?" Replying to Princess Consort, "This little one's name is Wang Xiaoxi. I'm the supervisor at the main gate. This little one knows everything that goes in and out of the palace." Wang Xiaoxi quickly replied. Han Yunxi was worried that she didn't have anyone she could use. She didn't expect that such a useful person would take the initiative to send her. She said in a low voice, "Take care of 7th Madam's room. Do you understand?" As she said this, she threw a silver ingot over. "Go drink wine with your brothers. This princess knows the way to the Han family." Wang Xiaoxi was a smart person. Taking the silver ingot, he was overjoyed and repeatedly thanked her. "Many thanks for Princess Consort's praise. This little one is willing to be a dog or horse for Princess Consort." Han Yunxi walked away, but Wang Xiaoxi was still standing there, immersed in joy. After being a gatekeeper for so many years, he finally had a chance to be promoted. How could he not be happy? Not to mention Qin Wangfei's noble status, she had the storehouse key in her hands. In the future, wouldn't she be able to make whoever she wanted be the head of the household? In the struggles of large families, it was important for a small character like him to choose a side. As long as he followed Qin Wangfei, he would definitely not choose the wrong side in the struggle for the position of the head of the household. After choosing a side, he naturally had to rope in some brothers to work for 7th Madam. Thinking of this, Wang Xiaoxi happily put away the silver ingot and hurriedly left. At this time, Madame Li walked out from the flower bushes. She looked at the entrance of the storehouse not far away and then looked at Wang Xiaoxi's back. Her lips curled into a contemptuous smile. The struggle for the position of the head of the Han family was very urgent, but Han Yunxi and Mu Liuyue's bet was even more urgent. It was only a month's time, and almost 10 days had passed. Han Yunxi returned to the estate and waited for 2 days. She assumed that Gu Beiyue would have time to see her by now, but she received tragic news instead. Esteemed Wang Fei, the steward of the Gu estate, said that Imperial Physician Gu won't leave the palace for a month. As for the details, this one couldn't ask him, the page boy reported. "What?" Han Yunxi exclaimed. The page boy thought she didn't understand and hastened to add, "The steward of the Gu estate said that Imperial Physician Gu is in the palace and won't be leaving for a month." This one asked why, but the steward said he didn't know. Han Yunxi's face had long turned ghastly white. If Imperial Physician Gu didn't leave the palace for a month, then Emperor Tianhui's illness must have worsened. The steward might not know such things, and even if he did, he wouldn't dare to say it. This is bad. Han Yunxi muttered to herself. After some hesitation, she went out to General Mu's estate. "Esteemed Wang Fei, this one was just about to report when you showed up. Mu Qingwu was surprised, but secretly rejoiced in his heart. Thank goodness Luyue had been invited out by a good friend. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble she'd stir up when she saw Qin Wangfei. Did you find out anything about the matter you wanted to investigate last time? Han Yunxi asked. Last time, they'd analyzed the 10,000 snake poison's properties and frequency of use. The poisoner was either a member of the Mu family or someone who frequently visited the Mu family. Even if it was a member of the Mu family, someone had to deliver the poison frequently. Mu Qingwu felt helpless. Esteemed Wang Fei, this one has thoroughly investigated. Before Mu Qingwu could finish, Han Yunxi saw the frown between his eyebrows and knew that there were no results. This lead had been cut off. How could this be? Their reasoning wasn't wrong. The 10,000 snake poison had to be used within a day of being concocted. Otherwise, it would have a color and smell. With Mu Qingwu's vigilance, it was impossible for him to not notice it. And to accumulate the poison, it would have to be used once every 2 or 3 days. No matter what, the poisoner must have a close relationship with the general's estate. However, they'd investigated and interrogated everyone, but they still couldn't find the culprit. Could it be that they'd missed out on some details or overlooked someone? To find the traitor, there were only 2 ways. One was to continue investigating the suspects in the general's estate, and the other was to find the 3 rare snake poisons. The latter was the goal of Han Yunxi's trip. Han Yunxi took out the prescription list and handed it to Mu Qingwu. Young General, these are the other 3 snake poisons. They're extremely rare snake poisons. Not to mention the average pharmacy, even the majority of medical families may not have them. Perhaps, it would be faster to start with these 3 snake poisons. She had held back before, but now that she couldn't find Gu Beiyue, she could only pass this lead to Mu Qingwu. At least, Mu Qingwu's connections were wider than hers, so there was more hope. Mu Qingwu glanced at the prescription list and hesitated for a moment. But very quickly, he raised his head and looked at Han Yunxi with a magnanimous gaze. He asked directly, Esteemed Wang Fei, you didn't mention these 3 snake poisons earlier because you were afraid that my father and I would be biased, right? The sudden question caught Han Yunxi off guard. However, Mu Qingwu had asked the right question. She did have such thoughts. She and Mu Luyue had made a bet for a month. The loser of the bet had to take off her outer clothes and run 1 round around Xuanwu Avenue. Neither she nor Mu Luyue could bear the consequences of this. However, this kind of bet only had winners and losers. There was no tie. One of them was bound to lose. If the investigation completely relied on General Mu and the young general, the father and son could drag on and wait until a month later to find the traitor. This way, they wouldn't lose anything. Secondly, Mu Luyue wouldn't lose. No matter what, Mu Luyue was still General Mu's only daughter. Of course, she had to hold back and investigate on her own. Who knew that Gu Beiyue couldn't leave the palace? Since Mu Qingwu asked like this, Han Yunxi didn't have anything to hide. She revealed a calm smile and openly admitted it, yes. Who would have thought that the always humble Mu Qingwu would become very serious? His clear eyes stared at Han Yunxi as he seriously said, Princess Consort, what kind of person do you think I, Mu Qingwu, am? Seeing Mu Qingwu's stubborn and open eyes, Han Yunxi suddenly felt like she was measuring a gentleman's belly with her own caution. Still, she didn't think it was wrong to protect herself like this. Young General, if your little sister loses, will you really be impartial and have her take off her clothes to run 1 round outside? Han Yunxi seriously asked. Who would have thought that Mu Qingwu would not hesitate at all? I will. Han Yunxi's heart gave a slight start. She didn't want to believe it, but Mu Qingwu's clear, bright eyes made it impossible for her to doubt him. A few days ago, Father and I even tried to persuade her to come and apologize so we could forget about the bet. Unfortunately, that girl won't cry until she sees the coffin, Mu Qingwu said mildly. So, you want to persuade me? Han Yunxi asked with furrowed brows. No, everyone has to pay the price for their own choices. Princess Consort, this is a bet between you and Liyue. Between you and this humble official, there is only the matter of investigating the case. Princess Consort, please be at ease. This humble official will do his best to cooperate, Mu Qingwu said seriously. Looking at Mu Qingwu, Han Yunxi's heart was filled with emotion. No wonder Mu Qingwu was able to control a large military force at such a young age. Despite being born into a noble family, he was so principled and straightforward. It was rare to see someone like him in Tianning's court. Han Yunxi knew that she could set her heart at ease for 100 years. Young general, I'll believe you. First, find someone to investigate these 3 snake poisons as soon as possible. Secondly, as I see it, anyone who can get close to you should be investigated in secret. No matter their status, that includes your closest relatives, Han Yunxi said seriously. Hearing this, Mu Qingwu was stunned. My closest relatives? Yes, young general. We've overlooked a very important point. The poisoner can borrow the hands of others, but it's very possible that the poisoner hasn't even realized it yet. Han Yunxi said bluntly. Chapter 87. If they were certain that the poisoner had close ties to the general's estate, then they couldn't rule out that possibility. Hearing Han Yunxi's words, Mu Qingwu finally understood. Esteemed Wang Fei's thoughts are truly meticulous. This official understands. Han Yunxi discussed a few more details with Mu Qingwu before leaving the general's estate. Unbeknownst to her, Long Fei had arrived as soon as she'd left. This was Long Fei Ye's second visit to General Mu's estate after discovering that he was a spy in northernly country. He was dressed in black robes as he sat domineeringly on the main seat in the main hall. His features were cold and indifferent, like a king who ruled over the world. The entire hall was quiet. Only General Mu was standing in the middle of the hall. Soon enough, Mu Qingwu hurried over. As soon as he entered, he gave a standard military salute and said, "This official greets Your Highness Duke of Qin." Long Fei gestured for him to dispense with the formalities before asking cold, "Did Han Yunxi just leave?" Han Yunxi. It had to be said that General Mu and his son both found it strange to hear those 3 words from His Highness Duke of Qin's lips. In their memories, the Duke of Qin had never called a woman by her name. Of course, it was impossible for him to call Han Yunxi his beloved consort. Like everyone else, he used to call her Qin Wangfei. Since when had he changed his way of addressing her? Despite their curiosity, neither General Mu nor Mu Qingwu had the guts to ask. In front of His Highness Duke of Qin, they felt even more pressure than Emperor Tianhui. The princess consort just left. This is the new clue she sent over. She sent a new message, Mu Qingwu said as he handed over the list of ingredients he'd just received. These are the 3 snake poisons that esteemed Wang Fei didn't mention before. She said they're extremely rare, so very few people in Cloud Realm continent have them. Long Fei nodded and asked, "Have the results of the investigation into the suspects in the estate come to fruition?" General Mu blushed with shame. "Reporting to Your Highness, there has been no results so far. Expand the scope of the suspects and continue to investigate," Long Fei said as a glint flashed in his eyes. He whispered, "Especially women." Hearing this, General Mu and the young general were both shocked. The Duke of Qin had been ordered by the Emperor to track down the spies of the Northernly Kingdom. So far, all of the spies he had found were women. This meant that Mu Qingwu's poisoning had something to do with this matter. In other words, it was very likely that there were spies from Northernly in the general's mansion. One had to know that the general's residence was a very sensitive place. Many military secrets came from there. Things were getting serious. At this time, how could General Mu still care about protecting Mu Luiyue? He had already forgotten about the bet between Mu Luiyue and Han Yunxi. He made a prompt decision. Rest assured, Your Highness Duke of Qin. This general will definitely expand the scope of the investigation, regardless of whether they are close or distant. Mu Qingguo had always known that his father would side with Luiyue. Seeing this opportunity, he said seriously, Father, Qin Wangfei suspects that the poisoner might have used someone else's hands. In this child's opinion, we can't miss out on the few cousins who frequently visit. He hesitated for a moment, then added, Of course, Liu Yue's side also needs to be investigated. If this was any other time, General Mu would have angrily rebuked Mu Qingguo for being muddle-headed. How could his blood-related little sister have evil intentions and be so careless? However, under these circumstances, General Mu didn't dare to lose his temper in front of His Highness Duke of Qin. After thinking it over, he looked at the Duke of Qin and said, Esteemed Wang Fei's words are reasonable. Long Fei Yi looked pensive, then quickly nodded and put away the list of ingredients. This prince will take care of these 3 snake poisons. As for the rest, you must speed up. Yes. General Mu and his son said in unison, respectfully accepting the order. Long Fei Yi stood up to leave, but when he reached the door, he suddenly stopped. He didn't turn back, but his voice was as cold as ever. This prince heard that Han Yunxi and eldest Miss Mu made a bet. What? His Highness Duke of Qin actually knew about the bet between Han Yunxi and Mu Luiyue. In order to reduce the impact, General Mu had already issued a gag order. None of the servants who knew of this matter were allowed to spread it around. How did His Highness Duke of Qin know? Reporting to Your Highness, this matter is true. My daughter is insensible and daring. This general will definitely teach her a good lesson. General Mu hurriedly explained. No matter what, he would do his best to prevent this from happening. Even if it didn't work, he would force Luiyue to apologize. He couldn't bear the consequences of this kind of lose-lose situation. Your Highness, please don't take it seriously. This general will definitely. Unexpectedly, before General Mu could finish speaking, Long Fei Yi interrupted him. This prince is actually looking forward to the results. As he spoke, he didn't ask any more questions and strode away. His figure quickly disappeared from the courtyard. General Mu stood rooted to the ground in a daze. After a while, he recovered his wits and slowly turned to look at Mu Qingguo. You, just now, did you hear what His Highness Duke of Qin said? Mu Qingguo was also very surprised. He muttered, His Highness said that he's actually looking forward to the results. General Mu's face paled and he panicked. What does that mean? Could it be that His Highness Duke of Qin also wants to see Luiyue take off her outer clothes and run a lap around Xuanwu Street? Thinking up to here, Great General Mu immediately rejected his own thoughts. He was definitely overthinking things. His Highness Duke of Qin wouldn't have the leisure to make things difficult for a little girl like Luiyue for no reason at all. Could it be that he wants to see Qin Wangfei take off her outer clothes and run a lap around Xuanwu Street after losing? No. General Mu slapped himself on the head. That's even more impossible. If Qin Wangfei really did run, then she would be slapping His Highness Duke of Qin's face. General Mu was furious. He glared at Mu Qingguo. What is Your Highness hoping for? The result of the bet. Mu Qingguo said timidly. Whose result? General Mu asked again. Mu Qingguo had nothing to say. General Mu was both angry and anxious. He turned his head and whipped the air. Mu Luiwe. When will that damned girl stop causing trouble? Since His Highness Duke of Qin had already said so, no matter what he meant, General Mu couldn't let Mu Luiwe apologize or ask Qin Wangfei to take back the bet. When the time came, he really didn't know how to clean up the mess. Mu Qingwu saw that his father was so angry, so he said seriously, "Father, Luiwe has grown up. Let her take responsibility for the trouble she caused. The matter of the spy is very important. If it really is a spy from Northernly and His Majesty blames us, we won't be able to explain ourselves." The situation had already reached this point, so what else could General Mu say? He looked irritably at Mu Qingwu. Immediately draw up a list of names and investigate them one by one. If it really is someone from the Fu, this general won't let them off easily. At this time, Mu Luiwe didn't know that her father was so angry that he wanted to hit her. She was currently meeting with friends at the most famous Heavenly Fragrance tea garden on the outskirts of the capital. Of course, she was concerned about the progress of the case, but her father and brother didn't say anything. However, seeing her father's worried face all day, she could guess that there wasn't much progress in the case. 10 days had already passed, so there were only 18 days left. Based on the current situation, Han Yunxi's fate was more likely than not. Moreover, even if there was any big progress in the next 18 days, she wasn't afraid. In any case, her father and brother were helping with the investigation. She didn't believe that her father and brother wouldn't care about her life or death. No matter what, there would be a way to delay it until a month later. This time, not only did she want Han Yunxi to suffer the consequences of her own actions, she also wanted to use the cruel truth to tell Han Yunxi that having the title of Qin Wangfei in vain wasn't as good as having a good background. Being able to marry into the Duke of Qin's household wasn't something to be proud of. Thinking of this, Mu Luiwe couldn't help but chuckle. At this time, Han Ruoxue personally walked over with a pot of tea. Seeing this, she smiled and said, "My eldest miss, what are you thinking about? You look so happy. Tell little sister and let me have some fun too." As she spoke, she placed the tea on the table and sat down cross-legged. She propped her chin up with both hands and looked like she was waiting for Mu Luiwe to speak. Mu Luiwe glanced at her and chuckled a few times before calming down. "Nothing, what could it be?" Han Ruoxue looked at her ambiguously. "You're smiling so much that flowers are blooming on your face. Could it be that you're thinking of some families?" Before she could finish speaking, Mu Luiwe grabbed the teacup in front of her and was about to throw it over. Han Ruoxue hurriedly stopped her. All right. I won't ask any more. I'll slap myself." Han Ruoxue made a show of slapping herself a few times. Before she came, she assumed that this eldest miss would dislike her because of Han Yunxi. She didn't expect her attitude to be the same as before. Still, it made sense. Mu Luiwe had been willing to befriend her not only because she'd given her many generous gifts, but also because she could find out a lot about Han Yunxi from her. Mu Luiwe glanced at her and smiled again. "That's more like it." Seeing that Mu Luiwe was in a good mood, Han Ruoxue amused to herself that she'd made the right appointment today. Come. This servant will brew another pot of good tea as an apology to eldest miss," Han Ruoxue jokingly imitated the servant's tone. Mu Luiwe arched an eyebrow. "All right, this young miss will wait." So speaking, the two of them burst into laughter. Han Ruoxue opened up a canister of tea leaves and handed it over. "Smell it. Doesn't it smell good?" The people of Tianing country were addicted to tea, especially those in the capital. Tea houses of all sizes filled the city, while the outskirts were mostly tea houses. People like Mu Luiwe who were very particular about the way of tea rarely went to tea houses. The tea leaves and spring water from their own homes were much better than those from other tea houses. If they were in the mood for leisure, or if it wasn't convenient to discuss matters at home, they'd usually meet at a tea house in the outskirts. They'd use freshly picked tea leaves and spring water from the mountains to brew tea that was a level higher in color, fragrance, and taste. Strictly speaking, Mu Luiwe and Han Ruoshue were tea friends. When the two of them met, they'd always meet at a tea house. Han Ruoshue had given Mu Luiwe plenty of priceless teas. Mu Luiwe took a light sniff. As the fragrance of the tea entered her nose, she instantly felt refreshed. She closed her eyes to savor the aftertaste as she indicated for Han Ruoshue to brew the tea. Needless to say, the same tea leaves, water, and teapot could be brewed differently by different people. Han Ruoshue was an expert in this field, and Mu Luiwe liked to drink the tea she'd personally brewed. However, she didn't know that Han Ruoshue had learned her way of tea from her mother, Madame Li. Very soon, a cup of light green tea was delivered to Mu Luiwe. Mu Luiwe smelled the tea's fragrance first, then took a small sip before drinking it. After savoring the aftertaste, she praised repeatedly, "Wonderful. Wonderful. I think I should invite Princess Chongping over tomorrow and let her have a taste too." Hearing this, Han Ruoshue secretly rejoiced. She'd long wanted to use Mu Luiwe to get close to Princess Chongping.